Hi, everybody. Welcome to The Source. My name is Aja Graydon Dantzler. I'm filling in for Andrea Lawful Sanders. And I love that song to begin today. Talking about blame it on my youth. I'm giving you what you love. I think that's a fantastic way to enter into this particular show. Today, we're going to be talking about the generation gap. I have told you, many times before, and if this is your first time tuning in, listening to me, let me give you a little background on myself. I am a professional singer and songwriter and performer. I'm one half of Kindred, the Family Soul. We're known for some songs like Far Away and Stars, so hopefully you guys are familiar with that. But one thing about my private life is that I am the mother to six children. And I'm currently mother to a 22-year-old son, a 19-year-old daughter, a 16-year-old daughter who's only going to be 16 for another week or so, a pair of 13-year-old twins, and an 11-year-old twin daughters, by the way, and a 11-year-old son. And so I feel like I kind of have this conversation pretty often and about how life affects them and really trying to get to know them and understand their perspective. And, when I was growing up, of course, my mom was born in 1949. She was, fresh out of her becoming a young adult during the 60s and 70s. A lot of things happened. There's war, sexual revolution. There's a racial consciousness. And so I think a lot of, my parents' generation, which is affectionately called the baby boomers, that many of them decided to take a very different, turn when they raised us. They wanted us to be different. They gave us, certain kinds of exposure to things that they weren't exposed to. I remember being a young person and my mother allowing my sister and I to have an opinion was a pretty radical thing. People would tell my mom things like, I can't believe you let those girls, talk like that. And or ask questions or question things that you do. And at the time, I just felt like, wow, people are just really being square. But now that I've become a parent, I realized that my mother taking this route was pretty radical for the time. But she wasn't the only one. Many of us, those of us who are now affectionately called Gen X, who are in our 40s and 50s, early 50s. Many of us, are products of having been raised a certain kind of way that was a little more progressive than, let's say, our parents were raised. And some of the things we were able to do, maybe our grandparents might have, had a little side eye looking at it. I say all this to say that my mother, what I took away from being raised from a mother who was very intentional about giving me a voice, I feel so grateful for that, because as an adult, it has helped me to be more specific about my needs. It's helped me to have more autonomy over my body. I think it has done all of the help in the world for me while still having respect, obviously, for my elders. And as I became a mother myself, raising my children has been a real adventure, if you will. And today I'm really looking forward to getting an opportunity to speak with several guests today and about this very thing, what it is like to be in community with young people, whether you are raising them as your blood, whether you are a community member, a neighbor, an auntie, an uncle, whether you are a brother, a sister, a teacher, all of the different ways that we come in contact with young people. Young people end up being a source of a lot of controversy and at the center of many conversations, especially ones that we have here in Philadelphia. Hot button topic of the day is gun violence. We talk a lot about this, and young people find themselves truly at the center of that conversation. So I'm really looking forward to talking to our folk today. Today, we're going to be talking with, in the first hour, Abdul Ali Muhammad, who is an activist and according to Philadelphia Magazine, to the best of Philly's 2021 Voice for the Voiceless. We'll be talking also with Dr. Camila Rashad, who is a psychologist who is the founder of the Muslim Wellness Foundation. She's done quite a few things, and we'll go over her background and what we know about her a little later in the show. And finally, I have a surprise guest near the end of the show in the last hour, and I want y'all to hang out with me because our surprise guests at the end are 3 of my children. And I'm excited to have them on the show because, because we have so many different age groups, I'll be talking with 3 of my children. My oldest child, who is a grown-up, a whole grown man. And we're excited to have an opportunity to talk to him. And then we'll be talking with my 16-year-old, who is a rising senior this year, who is on her way into young adulthood. And at the end of the show, we're going to be talking with my 13-year-old daughter. She is a twin. But I want to, get her a point of view about what it's like to be a preteen. And again, I know all of us remember, and many of us remember growing up. We have so many memories of our growing up. But I think it's really important to have a moment to talk to young people who are experiencing their youth in this very specific and unique time and place. So many things going on in the city this week. Before we get into it, want to shout out the Black Star Film Festival. Maori, who has been doing this now for 10 years. It's the 10-year anniversary of the Black Star Film Festival. It was founded by 3 Black women. And I think it's an amazing thing to see it progress the way that it has. Now it is officially a feeder into the Oscars. So a film festival that was founded on the premise of highlighting marginalized voices, specifically Black women filmmakers. Obviously, they have a diverse group of filmmakers at this point in time, but it was founded on that premise. What is really a beautiful thing to see is that now, and we talk about diversity in places like the Oscars, and Black Star Film Festival will now be one of the providers of many of the work that you may see considered for an Oscar. So I think that's pretty fantastic. So if you get an opportunity, they'll be having screenings all week, virtually and in person. So I would love for you to go down to their website and purchase some tickets to view some of this work, as well as support them as a film festival. Donate, buy tickets, spread the word, and check them out. Also on my radar for this week, and I know so many of us, especially parents, are watching how things are progressing around the country as it pertains to COVID. COVID, a lot of parents, I saw a meme circulating the other day, which I thought was really, really funny. It was just like, listen, y'all better figure out what y'all doing with these schools. Don't let me buy all these school supplies and then y'all close schools. Because y'all know that, especially for me, because I got so many people to buy for. But I thought that was funny, but then also it's like funny, but not quite funny. So we want to keep a close eye on how things are going. But so far, I've gotten a few robocalls as a parent, and it looks like things are a go. But Philadelphia, rather than pulling back any other mandates or enacting mandates again, is encouraging people, whether you are vaccinated or not, to just make sure that you put on a mask when you're going into public places. So I think that's responsible way to move forward. Hopefully everybody is taking good care of themselves, making the best decisions that they can for themselves and their families. Obviously, there's a lot of, people who may not be eligible for the vaccine, but certainly want those who are eligible to try to get it. If you're not going to get it, make sure that you're masking up, make sure you're taking good care of yourself and doing all the things that are necessary to move forward and keep our public health where it needs to be. I also want to shout out, me being a Gen Xer, I talked about that a few minutes ago. I want to shout out Biz Marquis, who passed away recently. His service was this week. From what I hear, it was a really beautiful service. Hip hop music has come a really long way, and so many of our hip hop pioneers we are starting to lose, and many of them very, very young. And it brings up the conversation around our youth. And the things that we experienced. And as we grow older, we go into our 40s and 50s, that we're taking really good care of ourselves. And I think that there's a saying in the internet, health is wealth, or health is the new wealth. We'll say that because they've been saying health is wealth for many, many years. But health being the new wealth, that much of our hip hop music that we grew up on talked a lot about being successful, making money, being famous, having a lot of, influence. And what we're coming to find out now is that the best influence is really to still be here, to be able to do all the things that you want to do, taking good care of yourself, avoiding some things that Black folk are really prone to get, high blood pressure, heart disease, diabetes. These are all things that, that we all suffer from, and that many of our hip hop artists, have had issues with. Biz Markie, as well as Fife from Tribe Called Quest, who we lost to complications from diabetes. Obviously, also Jay Dilla, who is a legendary producer. So many of our hip hop legends have left this place too early by not taking good care of themselves. So all you Gen Xers out there, y'all take your black seed oil and your sea moss and you eat your veggies and you get out there and you exercise, get into some nature, take good care of yourself so we can be a good example to these young people who we want to influence so very much. If you're just tuning in, you are listening to The Source. My name is Aja Graydon Dantzler, and I am filling in for Andrea Lawful Sanders. If you want to, chime in about what we're talking about today, we're talking about the generation gap. We're talking about young people, how we talk to young people, what's the best way to respect young people, what is the best way to get them to be amazing adults, do better than us. Because I think in many ways we may be somewhat failing at this. So if you want to chime in, I encourage you to call us here, 215-634-8065. Oh, we already got somebody. We got Woody from Philadelphia. Hey, Woody, I think we talked before. Thank you for calling back. How you doing?
Well, I gotta keep the show up. Andrea would not want me not to, but you are so magnificent because having 6 children, my mother had 10. So whenever I hear of a young woman, I think about my mom and raising all those kids and how she was able to love each and every one of us. Maybe a little different, but it was all the same kind of love. So I brought them all together one day, and I had my brothers and sisters, and I did an interview. And each and every one of them loved Mom differently. I thought everybody loved Mom the same. But it was such a wonderful interview when I interviewed them that brought 10 kids together and actually 9, because one of my brothers we haven't seen and I don't even want to say how long. But my point is this: I applaud you for being a mother of 6 children. Believe it or not, each morning I walk into the barbershop. I get here maybe an hour early, and I have a picture of my mother and my father when they first were married. She was only 15. Dad was in his 30s. And Dad said, well, I can't marry an old woman. I wanted all these children. So he did tell his friends that, and he ended up with 10 children. But they stayed together for all those years. We never moved out of the house that we lived in, never had to move around, and they stayed together all their lives. And I just applaud you for mentioning having these children. But believe me, I hear it from your voice what a caring mother you are. And once that umbilical cord is cut, it never really is cut once you really love your mother. So I applaud those two. I come in and just clap for about 2 or 3 minutes. If you come by the barbershop and you see a crazy man looking at a wall clapping, that's me in there applauding those two, because I can see myself in their eyes. And it's just a beautiful thing to know that you came out of 2 people that made you who you are today. So just wanted to applaud you and say keep up the good work. I like your spirit, and I love your information and conversation.
Oh, thank you so much, Woody. Appreciate you. Yeah, my mother came from a family of 8. My husband's father came from a family of 10. So yeah, having big families it's kind of an old school situation, but we try to apply some of the things we've learned over generations as well. Having 6 children is really tough. Having a large family is tough. I will, as much as I love my children and I'm blessed to have them, I'm always when I'm in a position like this one, when I'm able to talk to the people, I always want to really reiterate the challenges that I have, because I think it's easy to see the beauty. You see raising children, but I think oftentimes people are not always aware of the challenges. And sometimes as parents, we can get a little bit tricky about sharing the challenges because we don't want to be judged.
Yeah, and you don't want the kids, because the kids understand the weaknesses. Each child knows the weakness of their brother or sister, and they get teased. Michael Jackson, when he first came in my shop, one of the things he hated was his brothers teasing him about his nose. They would say he had a big nose, and Michael was real funny about that. So we discussed that issue, and I cut his hair in a way in which I told him, once you've done this, it won't look like your nose is so big. But it's not really that big. They're just teasing you. Then I told him about my family. So families have information that others don't have. It sounds like I'm talking over myself. I hear an echo. I don't know what that is.
We can't hear it.
You can't hear it. Okay. Well, anyway, just to say that you have a lesson to teach and a lot to share. So continue to talk about those kids, because each and every one of them came out of that womb. And from that womb was all that love that brought them into existence in the first place. They will never, ever forget their mothers. There's nothing better on the planet than a loving mother. So, again, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Well, thank you, Woody. I appreciate you calling in. I do. I truly do.
Yes, ma'am.
I also want to say this, in light of what Woody said, not to take anything away from that, because I own that. I take it. I receive it deeply. I also want to shout out my village. Two of our guests actually are part of my village as well today. But I also want to shout out my village. A village is a really important aspect. And here on URD now, I know, we talking about Black folk. And, every Black person, at least I hope many of you who are listening have heard, it takes a village to raise a child. And this is very true, especially in times where we talk about things like the nuclear family, things that don't really fully exist in the Black family. The Black family has always existed as a group of people, grandmothers, grandfathers, auntie, uncles, and we've always kind of come together. So I want to shout out my village. In order to raise 6 children, I have to have a really powerful one, and I do. And I'm really grateful for the people that have come to my aid and opened up my mind in terms of how to relate to my children. And I think they've done a good job. I think they've always given me perspective. And that's something that we're really hoping to get to today, is giving our audience a good perspective on what it's like to be young during this time, and how we can get into conversation with young people so that they know that they are loved. I think that is really a difficult thing right up and through here, even for grown-ups. I find that many of us, and I want to shout out my brother-in-law, because he put this on Facebook recently. My brother-in-law wrote, in this moment, how many of you feel loved and appreciated, like right now? And it was really fascinating to see how people responded to this question. And for me, being a mother, immediately I'm thinking, wow, do my children feel loved and appreciated in this moment? And I think we would be really surprised to hear our children's answers, because oftentimes we don't realize how much our kids are performing happiness for us, performing wellness for us. And so we really want to get to the bottom of this. And I'm hoping, I know my children, they may be listening right now. I hope they are. But I want y'all to know something. When I asked my children to come on this show, I want y'all to know that this is safe for them. I wanted them to speak candidly. I'm not afraid. Even if they say something about me or about how I have, approached anything that made them feel less than the way they would like to feel, this is what we're really trying to get at. We're trying to get at the good of the good. We're trying to get underneath the surface with our young folks, because freeing our young people, making them feel loved, confident, and amazing on the inside is how we really ensure that our future is going to be what it needs to be, because we are all going to become seniors, and God willing, we'll be seniors who see a nice long life, and we're going to need people to pass the baton to. And so we need to be really serious about understanding, our young people's perspective so that we can do exactly that. So yeah, again, if you guys want to chime in, I love talking to y'all. Call us at 215-634-8065. And if you're just tuning in again, I'm Aja Graydon Dantzler, and one half of Kindred the Family Soul. And I also did want to shout out to you guys real quick. to say thank you for so many of you who reached out to me and gave me good feedback about our new album, which is called Auntie and Unc. So if you get a chance to listen to that today or anytime soon, please do. It's on all streaming platforms. And if you want to hear more of what we do here at WURD, if you want to stand with WURD, the only Black-owned talk radio station in Pennsylvania, do you know that you can join the Forward movement and amplify the voices of the Black community as a digital member for as low as $5 per month. You can visit WURDradio.com or call 215-425-7875. We need you to show your support, join or renew your Forward movement membership today.
Hey, WURD family, did you hear? It's official. The Colorectal Cancer Alliance just announced the new age for colon cancer screenings has been officially lowered to age 45 for everyone. If you are 45 or older, it's time to get screened. Go to WURDradio.com and click on the Go to Know banner to register for your free at-home screening test. Did you know colon cancer is largely preventable with on-time screening? And there's a 90% survival rate when caught early. African Americans are 20% more likely to get colon cancer and about 40% more likely to die from it than most other groups. So for the next 3 months, you can go to WURDradio.com and click on the Go to Know banner for your free at-home screening test. A screening navigator will contact you to ask a few questions and help you get screened. It's that simple. Again, just go to WURDradio.com, click on the Go to Know banner, and fill out the form to request your free at-home screening test. Go to Know today.
Black Broads Abroad is a new show hosted by yours truly, Felina Jean. I've been an expat for over a decade, living across 4 continents, 6 countries, with travel to over 40 places in between. My show will feature spotlight interviews of compelling Black women who have also said peace out to the divided states and are thriving abroad. From Iceland to Istanbul, Madagascar to Mogadishu, and a host of other countries. Tune in every second Sunday of the month from 5 to 6 p.m.
As a community service, WURD Radio and the Black Doctors COVID-19 Consortium wants to keep you informed about where you can get barrier-free COVID-19 testing and vaccination this week. Tuesday, August 3rd and Thursday, August 5th from 10 a.m. till 4 p.m. at Deliverance Evangelistic Church, 2001 West Lehigh Avenue in Philadelphia. For more information, visit blackdoctorsconsortium.com. Stay informed and stay well with WURD Radio. 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD.
You're listening to The Source
on WURD Radio,
96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD.
Hey everybody, welcome back. My name is Aja Grayton Dantzler. I'm filling in for Andrea Lawful Sanders right here on The Source. If you would like to chime in today about our subject, please call 215-634-8065. And if you have family members or friends or whoever you are thinking, hey, you know what, you need to be hearing this, please let them know that they can listen at WURDradio.com, and they can listen online to what we're talking about. Today, we're actually talking about the generation gap. This is a really important thing for me because, like I said, I'm a mother to 6 children and come in contact with quite a few young people by way of their friends and my community members and family. And I was really excited to have this first guest on, as we have had many personal conversations about young folks, but also because of the type of work that they do. I'd like you guys to welcome Abdul Ali Muhammad to the show. They are the co-founder of the Black and Brown Workers Co-op. And in their work, they often problematize medical surveillance, discuss the importance of bodily autonomy, and center Blackness. They identify as queer and non-binary and grew up right here in West Philadelphia. Welcome to the show, Abdul.
Peace, peace. Thanks for having me on.
I'm so excited to talk to you. We do have a caller, so I want that caller to hold just one moment as we get into this first question, because this is really important for me. Oh, and you know what? See, I'm messing up. I want everyone to remember this also. And I know, sometimes we get a little shy about being lauded, but I want to applaud you for being Philadelphia Magazine's 2021 Best of Philly Voice for the Voiceless. So
Thank you.
clap, clap, clap,
I
clap,
appreciate
clap.
that.
Applause to you. Applause to you. And that gets me into my first question, which is, do you consider the youth among the voiceless?
Absolutely. I think that young people in this city are not often heard or not often listened to. Their leadership isn't often followed. And so I do think that there's lots of space for young people to take up and that they should take up in conversations when it comes to policy making, when it comes to public space. And they're often, talked for and not asked what they want.
Yeah, and I absolutely agree. Many times I've been in so many environments, whether it be at school, whether it be in community spaces, where the youth come up as an afterthought, and oftentimes they're spoken for, or this is what young people want, and are almost always not on target.
No, yeah, so true.
And the youth that we choose to involve in these conversations are often the youth that we decide are most in alignment with what we think is quote unquote successful. So we'll only choose the young people who have the good grades, or the young people who we think are excelling academically. So I'd love to know your thoughts on, like, what are some key things that we need to know about what our youth are just not saying to us? What are some of the things that they're silent about in the spaces that we don't seek out?
I think young people are mostly silenced around how they feel and think about themselves and the world. I can't, in the work that I've done previously and do now, talking to young folks about their identities, I think, most families, because a lot of people in family units assume or think that their children are cisgender and heterosexual. They don't have certain conversations with them, or the young people don't feel safe enough in the context of their family unit to disclose what they're doing in the world, and they're not provided space to really talk about that. And I recall previous to coronavirus pandemic, there was these noise machines. I don't know if you remember this, but they were making frequency noise at parks that young people could hear, and that would bother them to prevent them from gathering at parks. And so you see in this city, in particular, Black and brown young people being policed in terms of their gathering spaces. And there's not enough public space dedicated for young folks to gather. And so you see young people in Center City while there's 20 to 30 bike cops trying to get them to disperse. Or you see cops waiting outside of schools, outside of the, what they're calling the fashion district, which will always be the gallery to be.
Right.
Policing young people for gathering.
Mm-hmm. And ultimately coming in contact with police, especially when you're young and you do not have, the advocacy of an adult, can turn disastrous very quickly. And we all know this. I want to really quickly go to someone who's on the line, who's been waiting for a moment just to see what they're talking about. Prince from Schuylkill is on the line.
Hey, good afternoon. How are you?
Good afternoon. How are you?
If this situation, well, I have a 34-year-old and I have a 14-year-old males, and if this situation was him being a counselor or an advocate, then that would be different. But for him to classify as queer when we come from a household of men, uncles and godfathers and grandfathers, it's no different than a white person being classified because he's a white person to do the job in which he's doing. And so I think it's a bit irresponsible to say his lifestyle, if I'm a Christian or a Muslim, and his lifestyle is not congruent with my children's lifestyle, I wouldn't want him talking to my kids. I wouldn't want him having a conversation with my kids. And I wouldn't have known about his lifestyle if he didn't classify himself as a certain situation. And so I think if we're out here going to do the work, we're going to fund politicians or taxpayers are going to fund the work to be done, it should be done without the classification. Because if the work is what he's searching to do or what you guys are searching to obtain, it shouldn't be based on the classification. It should be based on the need. And so I take offense to this whole, he identifies as queer. I don't think we should have said that. We should have said he's doing the work.
Well, I'm going to stop you right there because you can't take offense to me living my truth. That's not how that works. This is who I am, and I hear what you're saying. And and let me clarify for you. I don't work for any institution. I do this work because it matters and because young black people in this city need to be heard. And I think it's an assumption when people claim identities for their children. I think you need to have conversations with your children about who they are and who they see themselves as in the world. You can't make assumptions about that. And so, and I want to directly respond to what you said about taking offense. How are you taking offense to who I am? That doesn't make sense to me.
Okay, go ahead. I'm listening.
No, that's the question for you. How are you taking offense to who I am? And it's not a quote-unquote lifestyle. This is who I've always been. And yes, there was points of realization of that identity, but it's not about a lifestyle.
I'm taking the offense to the title that was given to you. I don't know you as
who
a
I
person.
am.
But listen, if that's who you are, then the parents who are suffering, the single moms who have male children who are low income and suffering economically and mentally, you shouldn't be the first exposure. You should not be the first exposure to those young African-American males. If we call them African-American and males, then you should not be the first exposure to the tutelage of them. And that's my opinion. And I'm giving my opinion, and I'll hang up and I'll listen to you guys. But that's my opinion. Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you, Prince, for calling in. Let's address that. I think at the end of the day, I think sometimes what ends up happening is that we forget that our young people that our young people identify as this without any exposure to anyone. This is who some of our young people are. I think all parents are concerned about their children and how they interact with folk. But I think it's important for us to realize that our children are going to be who they are, regardless of what we think or say. And so once they are who they are, they deserve to have someone and people to love them, listen to them, and hear them. Is there anything that you want to say in response to that? I mean, I'm sure this is something that you hear a lot. And, let me just apologize if there's any part of that was harmful to you. So, and even if it's someone's opinion, I think we all need to realize that opinions can also be harmful to people. They can harm they can harm people quite a bit. So with all due respect, but is there anything you'd like to say, Abdul, in response to that?
I mean, that's the response, right? That's I'm 37 years old. I'm black. Grew up in West Philly and to two Muslim parents, right? So I have heard, seen, felt the hatefulness around homophobia and transphobia, around this idea that we need to indoctrinate a certain kind of heterosexuality onto young people, especially black boys. The idea that there's a kind of performance of masculinity that's allowed, around this idea that if you're assigned male at birth, that you have to interact with the world a certain way, and what I say to that's the white supremacist construct, right? That there's always been people who are not quote unquote cisgender or heterosexual in black families, and that goes back generations, that goes back pre-colonial time. And so I think this idea that I should not be interacting with young people because I disclosed who I am is a dangerous kind of idea. And it silences folks, and that's why you see the deep vulnerability of young black people in this city who are ostracized and kicked out of their homes because they don't perform a certain gender, and because they're not the gender assigned to them at birth, they have another identity that isn't seen as real. And I think that is what I'm hearing, is that person is saying to me that my existence is an affront to him. That how is it that me existing in the world you have a conflict with? That makes no sense to me. I said I'm queer. I said I'm black. I said I'm non-binary. How is that in conflict with who you are? And that's the deep issue with homophobia, which is connected to these larger systems of patriarchy, of white supremacy.
And so we have to realize also too that when it comes to young people, that we make our young people even more vulnerable when we don't allow space for them to express who they are and identify the way that they identify. Because what happens is that a young person goes out onto the street, and then you have another houseless person, you have another unhoused person, you also have a person who may not be able to gain employment, you have a person who may not have access to healthcare. And so it becomes a much bigger issue for us as a community around the people around us that are underserved, and that just by simply not being able to be heard, loved, or even acknowledged in their existence, we then create an even bigger problem that we're already trying to come to terms with. And and that's my belief around it.
Yeah, absolutely. And like, I want to address what he said earlier too, which is you're saying like you're raising, males. You said, you don't know who you're raising, and unless you have conversations with your children and ask them who they are. You can't project what you think their identities are. And like you said, that's a dangerous kind of line to hold, because when you do that, you in effect silence them and make them feel less likely, less safe to come to you with information about who they are.
And I think you can only really chime in on something when you understand it. Understanding something is really important aspect of young people, because many young people don't feel understood for a myriad of different reasons, and not just around sexuality and gender. I think a lot of times we get caught up in that, and we don't realize that there's a ton of different things that young people are thinking and feeling and that we ostracize and isolate them for. One thing that I wanted to ask you also too is, and you had some really great thoughts about this, we talk about gun violence here in Philadelphia, and I think there's a big divide or generation gap going on here as we understand what's happening with young people. I think I hear so much of this same thing, and I told you this recently. People say, oh, what's wrong with these young people? And I always kind of feel a little bit uncomfortable with that, because I'm like, I don't want to start the conversation with that there's something inherently wrong with our young folks, and then especially when it comes to violence, and that there's not anything leading up to that there aren't issues surrounding that. So I'd love to hear your thoughts, again, about how we relate to our children and talk to our young people around gun violence.
Yeah, I thank you for that. I again grew up in West Philly. I remember in the 90s being told that
what? I apologize for cutting you off. I'm so sorry. Please hold that thought. Okay. I've gone over a little bit because we took the call. We got to take a quick break. I would love to hear the rest of this on the other side of this break. We have a call on and everything. So we'll be right back right after this. Y'all, hang in there. We'll be right back on The Source.
Are you a small business owner in Philadelphia or New Jersey? Are you looking for ways to grow your business but don't know where to start? You may qualify for a Job Creators Quest grant for up to $11,000. This grant supports diverse small business owners who are women, people of color, LGBTQ, military veterans, or located in a low to moderate income area. Imagine what you could do with extra funds to improve your company, hire more people, invest in marketing to promote your business, or even add technology to be more efficient. Founders First is on a mission to support diverse-led small businesses, and we are giving 20 grants to the local small business community for a total of $60,000. For more information, visit www.phillygrants.org. Again, go to www.phillygrants.org for details and to apply today. Congratulations to all job creators from Founders First.
Kamasi Washington brings his fall tour to the Met Philly, one of only 6 dates on the East Coast. Don't miss Kamasi Washington October 20th at the Met Philly. Tickets on sale now as of July 30th. Tickets available at Ticketmaster.com.
Save the date. Thursday, August 26th for WURD Radio's annual Founders Day celebration, honoring the life of our founder, Walter P. Lomax Jr., MD. This year, we'll be both in person and virtual. Stay tuned to WURD Radio and WURDradio.com for more information. That's Thursday, August 26th for our annual Founders Day celebration. Exclusively on WURD Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD. Streaming live on WURDradio.com, the WURD Radio app, or watch live on WURD TV via Facebook and YouTube.
You're listening to The Source
on WURD Radio,
96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD.
Welcome back. This is Aja Graydon Dantzler, and you're listening to The Source. I'm filling in for Andrea Lawful Sanders. Today, we're talking about the generation gap. We're talking about talking with our young people and opening up our minds to make sure that we are giving them a voice, that we are, understanding who they are at their core, because this is the way that we invest in the future and make sure that they feel loved and appreciated. We have Abdul Ali Muhammad on the line, and they were just talking about how we can approach the conversation around gun violence. Young people tend to be right at the center of this conversation, and oftentimes heavily involved. You know, as you see, a lot of young folks in the city are dying currently because of this particular situation. So you were right in the middle of giving us your thoughts on that, and I'd love for you to continue.
Yeah, thank you. I think I was going to talk about the history of redlining in the city because the Comptroller's Office, they are mapping the shooting violence in Philadelphia, including the homicide. And, they have a map of kind of the borders of neighborhoods that were impacted by redlining. And what you see is where the violence is immense. It's in those neighborhoods where we've experienced generational, municipal divestment, right, or discrimination or anti-blackness from banks, from city institutions, et cetera. So you see this pattern that this is connected to larger systems, but what we constantly hear is this rhetoric about behavior, which is a product of white supremacy, right? This idea that there's something innate about our behavior as Black people that leads to this kind of violence, when we should know in our core that it's institutional, that it's systemic, that it's cultural, and that, it's more than just quote-unquote behavior that we have to address. And the other piece that I would say is if you tell young people constantly over the years in school that they are not fully human, which is the messaging that we receive as Black people in the city, is that, that you can't trust yourself, you can't trust your decision making, you're not smart enough, right? You don't have you don't have what it takes. If you constantly tell young people that and expect a favorable outcome, it just doesn't make sense to me. And then the other piece is there's a lot of cyclical conversations about, somehow interrupting the cycle of violence. And a lot of people who should know better, who were alive in the 90s, go back to policing as if that's going to fix the issue. It's never going to fix the issue of gun violence in the city. You can hire all the cops. It won't change what we're really talking about here, which is the root of the problem, which is these larger constructs. And I've never heard a forum where young people were asked directly, where young people organized and said, this is what we want to see. What constantly happens is young people are tokenized by older folks to be in a room with older people talking about what they think the solutions are, instead of young people leading that, because they are the most impacted by this kind of violence. And so they should be listened to, and their leadership really should be followed on this. And then lastly, I'll say, we have to talk about reducing harm. It's not enough to go on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram and talking about stop the violence, increase the peace. You have to come up with strategies of reducing harm. One of the strategies around reducing harm is figuring out where these ghost guns are coming from. They're not coming from our youth. They don't have access to these kinds of weapons. They're coming to our neighborhoods from where? Question mark. The other part is you have young people who are engaging with weapons when they are in conflict. And so the first time that a lot of these young people pick up a gun is when they're trying to attack somebody else, or they feel threatened, or they feel like disrespected. And so there's not a lot of conversation around gun safety for young people. You have to do something. You have to teach young people how to use these guns. And I know that seems counterintuitive, but it actually will help reduce the level of violence that we see when young people pick up a weapon for the first time and spray a whole block. The other part is having intentional conversations with young people about how do we have conversations, how can we be in conflict and make that conflict generative and not deadly. Because all conflict isn't necessarily bad, but how do we have conversations with young people about, okay, how do you deal with conflict? When something happens, what do you do? What's your safety plan, right? When you go to the basketball court, do you know where the exits are? Do you know how to get out quickly if something happens? Do you know where to go to in the neighborhood if a shooting happens? These are the conversations I want to see.
I think that, and honestly, several of these things I've never heard brought up before. And mind you, just because I didn't hear it doesn't mean that it wasn't said. But I will say that, this is some things that I've actually never heard before. But it makes sense, because when we had a lot of the mass shootings going on, one of the big responses from schools was to then tell kids what to do if you had an active shooter. If you knew something was going on, where can you go? What are the safe ways to deal with things? And then also, too, there is a lack of conflict resolution in general in our society, very little reciprocity. And so we're asking people to have this, but where would they have learned it from? They certainly wouldn't have learned it from history books, and they most certainly wouldn't have learned it by watching, how police resolve things. And so, between school and policing, many of our young people in some of these neighborhoods that you're talking about that have been divested from, these are two, parts of the state that they come most in contact with. So if there's no reciprocity in either, then I think it's really difficult to then assume that young people would have that, No,
absolutely. And then look at the older folks. It's interesting because the same people who don't understand the level of violence are the same folks who can't resolve conflict themselves, who will be out in the street fighting at the bars, right? Who will be trying to shoot at other people. And it's like, this is, a lot of what happens in terms of how young people are socialized comes from modeling, comes from seeing older people do the things, right? And so the older people who are doing the things get into a conflict and immediately jump to fighting, and then we tell young people, "Oh, you can't fight and pick up weapons." Make it make sense. You know what I mean? There see models of this happening in the city with older folks around. This is, this person and I are in a conflict. We're going to have a conversation about why we are in conflict, because half the times we don't know. Half the times we're in the middle of something, we're in the heat of the moment, and we don't understand truly why we are in conflict with each other. And so I think having those kinds of tools for young people in actual concrete safety planning. Black people, we have to safety plan, and I'll tell you a way that this shows up in real life. Folks who encountered the police a lot. Maybe you have a car that cops like to stop that they think is fancy, or you are just that person that they assume fits the description all the time, like I am. There's certain things that I know to do, right? I know that I need to be walking down crowded streets mostly. I know that when I see a white person or a group of white people and it's dark and it's late and I have a hoodie on, I try to avoid those cars. I cross the street, right? I try, you know, if you're in a car and you know you're going to get stopped often, come up with, tell people your information, have a family member know where you're going, record your interactions, right? If you see that happening to another black person, cop watch, record that interaction. So we know about safety planning when it comes to interactions with police, and I think we need to have safety planning when it comes to just community violence, right? If you're at the park at, let's say, King Sussing, right? Who's the block captain on, let's say, on 51st Street?
Yeah.
Let's find out who the block captain is. Is it okay if something happens for a young person to come knock on that person's door, right? Is that the designated spot to go to? There's people who do food distribution. Can that be a house where young people can come when a conflict arises to seek support from older folks if they don't have their parents immediately available, right? Those kind of strategies. Like, we need to have community-rooted, neighborhood-specific strategies around what do we do in this moment besides just, rely on the state, because the state is not going to save us.
Right. We have a few minutes before our next break. I just want to ask you this question before we wrap up. What are some things to keep in mind when addressing young people who we're not actually parenting? I think sometimes we've all had that interaction with a young person that we tried to reach out to them and they get out my face, or, there's an immediate kind of negative vibe. And then I've had it the opposite too, where young people have responded lovely to me. But, just in your opinion, what are some things that we can keep in mind when we're trying to impart some wisdom, when we're trying to keep them safe and they're not necessarily under our charge?
I say try the best you can. I will tell you, when someone is heightened, they're not going to listen, right? If somebody is in the heat of the moment, they're upset, and you're trying to break up a fight or whatever, they're not in a space to hear you. And so understand that in that moment, that might not be the right moment to have a conversation with them about, like, hey, what happened? And just understand that again, there's autonomy there, that you can't decide if they want to listen to what you have to say or your advice. And offer it up if you can, and if you can't, cool. Not everyone's going to be able to hear you because it depends. Those relationships depend on the rapport that you have with that young person, the trust that you have with that young person, and I think that those things matter. And oftentimes, as older folks, I know we often don't want to see somebody make a mistake. Right, like I'm trying to get you to avoid making a mistake, and so sometimes that comes off very angry or aggressive in the ways that we're trying to impart knowledge and wisdom. And I think trying to understand that we were once young, right, and that there's a moment in your early teens, late teens, where you feel like you do have all the answers or you do know enough, right? And so I think trusting the ways that you've brought up your children. I remember having a conversation with my mother, who's no longer living, but when I had this conversation with her, she was worried about something I was doing. And I said, Mom, do you believe that you raised me well? She said, yes. I said, do you believe that you've instilled values and ethics and thoughtfulness in me? Yes. So then trust me. Trust me. Give me a little bit of room, space. Trust that you did something right, too.
That's funny because my son said the same thing to me once.
Yeah,
I think that's an amazing way to approach things. It's like, how much faith do you have in your ability to parent? you know, and once you've instilled things, how can you step back and say, you know what, I know I taught you that, and I'm going to allow what I taught you to stand and to do what it's supposed to do, which is to guide you and to ground you. And so, yeah, I thank you so much for coming on, Abdul.
Thank you.
You said some amazing things, and I really do hope that everybody really took to heart, you know, many of the things you talked about, because you touched on many, many things that we can keep in mind with our young people. We're about to take a quick break again.
Okay.
Again, I'm Aja Graydon Dantzler. I'm filling in for Andrea Lawful Sanders, and you're listening to The Source.
Tune in every Saturday at 4 p.m. for the Did You Know Show with host Bryant Green, right here on WURD 96.1 FM and 900 AM.
So, what's the asking price on this house?
You'd probably be more comfortable living somewhere else.
How long a lease is the landlord looking for?
Well, I'm sure you can afford to live here, but...
What are the schools like in this district?
Yeah, we have twins in the 5th grade.
This neighborhood isn't really for your kids. You know what I mean?
If you're Black, Latino, Asian American, or Middle Eastern, and a real estate agent or rental agent says anything like this, you know what it means. You're being discriminated against. Housing discrimination because of race, color, or national origin is against the law. If you believe you've experienced housing discrimination, contact HUD. Go to HUD.gov/fair housing. That's HUD.gov/fair housing. Fair housing. The law is on your side. A message from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development in partnership with the National Fair Housing Alliance.
Be there this Friday at the Summer Freedom Neighborhood Love Tour and stand with WURD Radio to amplify voices of the Black community as a digital 4WURD member for as low as $5 per month. And receive a free gift for signing up. See you on Friday and join Tiffany Bacon, 10 a.m. till noon at the Marian Anderson Recreation Center, 740 South 7th Street, or visit WURDradio.com. Start or renew your 4WURD membership today. The WURD Radio newsletter, keeping you informed, engaged, and connected. Sign up by visiting WURDradio.com. Scroll to the bottom of the page and type your email address under Connect with Us. You'll receive the latest information on WURD Radio, messages from our president and CEO, Sarah Lomax Reese, exclusive articles and multimedia content, and resources. Stay informed with the WURD Radio newsletter. This is WURD Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD Philadelphia. Streaming live on WURDradio.com, the WURD Radio app, or watch live on WURD TV via Facebook and YouTube. WURD Radio, independent Black media.
You're listening to The Source
on WURD Radio,
96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD.
Welcome back to The Source. This is Aja Graydon Dantzler. I'm filling in for Andrea Lawful Sanders. And today we're talking about young people. We're talking about the generation gap, talking about how we can do a better job of relating to our young people, hearing our young people, figuring out how they think and what they need from us. As you know, that is our responsibility as the elders of the community. And, you know, we want to get into that. In the first hour, we had a great opportunity to talk with Abdul Ali Muhammad, and they spoke about the importance of being safe and about creating safe spaces for our young people to talk about who they are, about their identities, but also about preparing and talking about the current situation with gun violence and how we can be more preparatory in the way that we approach what we do. Safety, identifying safe places in the community for people to respond when violence breaks out, having a better system in place for reciprocity and conflict resolution. And so all these things I thought were really, really wonderful. And again, if you want to chime in on this conversation, you can call 215-634-8065. I believe we may still have George on the line. Is George still there? How you doing?
Fine. How are you today?
Good. I'm good.
I was driving down the turnpike and I was listening. You know, can you just describe to me what he considered himself to say? You know, because he said something. I want to make sure that I heard it right. I mean, you bisexual, homosexual, or whatever it is. Just clarify that part for me first.
I believe that they identify as queer. That was the word.
But that is a very offensive word in the gay community. I mean, I have heard of that stupid gay. I mean, been gay all his life, and that's why I support him and love him. But I also support my brother and his beliefs with whatever it is, I pay his way or he pays his own way. He's well off. He's okay. But
right.
That is a very offensive word to gay people, queer. You go around
I just want to, I'm sorry, I just want to, I want to respect your opinion and obviously, but I do want to just mention to you that, yes, you're absolutely right that for certain generations, yes, at one time it was, but in the current kind of iteration of the word, much like how we've seen people reinterpret many words within community, that is not looked upon that for certain young people anymore. So I just want to just put that out there, just so you know. And I really appreciate you calling in and actually bringing that up, because I think that exists within the generational divide within that community, because there are going to be some people who are not happy with that word. So I appreciate you calling, Georgia, and bringing that up.
Well, also is that because I'm saying that there because the average listening person that listens to URD is between 45 and 70, and most of them have a real, I don't even like to say homophobic. Most of the people listening to this station at that age bracket, they came along where so they look down upon it and this and that and the other, But I'm trying to move along. That's enough of that homosexual conversation there. Second thing is that he was saying something about guns. What are your experience with guns? Or how much do you know about guns? You say guns in the neighborhood and this and that, how they get there. I mean, how much do you know about guns? Or what community do you go in and, try to stop or support or whatever it is you do?
Well, they're no longer on the phone, but I will say this, that the opinion was just based on having been an activist, but also the observation that what is happening, especially around gun violence, often happens because there's no familiarity with what is being done, and mistakes happen and people don't know how to handle what they're handling. And I will give you an example. In the Midwest, you have a lot of young people who shoot guns and go hunting and things of that nature and are very familiar with these weapons. And so they know how to use them properly. And even though you might feel, and this is fair enough, that was a controversial thing to say, what we're seeing a lot of times in our communities is that the violence becomes even more tragic because the first time that some of our young people are coming in contact with these weapons is because they have no idea how to use them. So I think that was the point that they were making about that. So I just wanted to kind of be clear, just clear that part up. Do you feel like you have a better understanding of what was being said in that moment?
One thing I like about you, you're very clear on protecting your guests and your people. You're really good at it. I mean, and I don't find too many people that sharp that go and clean up other people's mess. But you're a good cleanup. I mean, you're very good. You're very smart. I got to hand it to you on that, because 75% of the things he was saying, he should have been prepared to come on the station and say it, because 75% of the stuff he said was wrong. First of all, with the guns are plentiful because they're plentiful to get to, and they're not considered guns. There's nothing the police or anybody else can do about these guns, period. Because, one, they're not a gun until they're assembled together. You go to a gun house, that's why Josh Shapiro, and I just found out about maybe a week ago, when I said on the air, is that Josh Shapiro bought 25 gun houses and had to give all of them back. He had to give every last one of those guns back. You know why? They weren't guns. They're not considered guns. You got to, when people come on here talking about guns, this, that, and the other, you got to know what you're talking about. You got to be prepared. You just can't say, oh, I'm an activist, I'm this, I'm that. These airways are very valuable and very expensive, and people listen. So if you don't come prepared, you shouldn't come at all. You're prepared. You know what you're talking about, but yet you're cleaning up a mess that he made, because you can't clean up all day, because people are going to try to question what he was saying. And a lot of people just not going to question because they know they got other people who will question it, and I'm questioning. I mean, he needs
I will say this. First of all, thank you for calling in. We do have other callers, but I always say this, that again, if what you're saying is that we can't do anything about the guns, the truth of the matter is we have to figure out how to live and how to stay alive and how to be safe. So I think that, and again, that was the conversation that we were having, and that's not an attempt to clean up anything, but I do appreciate you calling and sharing your opinion. Of course, this is what this is for. This is a station for the people, so that so that people can talk and so that we can work these things out. I think, and so thank you again for calling in, George. We have Joyce from Winfield on the line.
Hey, how are you? I just wanted to.
Are you there, Joyce? I'm sorry. I'm having a hard time hearing you. I think your connection is bad. How about you try to, can you say it one more time?
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you a little better, yeah.
I just wanted to thank you so much for the great work you're doing this week here as a guest host.
Thank you.
And also the beautiful music you shared with us over the years, you and your beautiful family.
Thank you.
And you're going to mess around and get your own show, I am sure.
Oh, I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, have a good day. So yeah, thank you, Joyce, for calling in. Again, today we're talking about the generation gap, talking about young folks, talking about the things that are important to them, how we can better relate to them. And we have our next guest who is actually on the phone, and I'd like to do a quick introduction. On the phone, we have Dr. Camila Rashad. She's the founder of the Muslim Wellness Foundation, a nonprofit dedicated to promoting healing and emotional well-being in the American Muslim community. She's also the founder of the National Black Muslim COVID Coalition that's tracking the experiences of Black folk and their family members, collecting data about their experience with COVID, and also the annual Black Muslim Psychology Conference. It's and also the Deeply Rooted Emerging Leaders Fellowship for Black Muslim youth. Black Muslim young adults. So welcome, Dr. Rashad. How are you?
Well, welcome. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you for having me.
Wa alaikum assalam.
Can you hear me okay?
I can. I can hear you perfectly.
I know you want to dive right in, but can I say something about your previous caller?
Yes.
So as I was listening and thinking about this question of how we can be better elders, right, there was something about, the caller's comments, right, which everyone is free to have their different points of view. I think when we're talking about how we can be better elders and how we can, extend ourselves to young people, we have to be able to approach these conversations with some semblance of humility, right, of being open to the possibility that we are wrong, right, open to the possibility that there is so much that we can continue to learn even from our young people, right? And so things change all the time. There is language on social media, culture changes, things shift, things that were out are now in, things that were in are now out, right? I mean, and it might feel like it's happening at like a dizzying pace. However, right, we always have to think back to those times when we were young, when we were seeking answers, when we thought we had all of the answers, and think about those times when an elder approached us, kind of alongside us, right? Not in direct confrontation, not in proving that they were, so much more wise and worldly than we were, but they approached us with kind of a love, also with a humor, a care that allowed us to be who we are, and also indicated there's something I want to learn from you, right, as a young person, and I also think that there are some things that you can learn from me as an elder, right? There was reciprocity in that exchange, and what I observed and sort of felt from the previous caller's comments was sort of the dynamic that often leads to young people feeling very shut down, not heard, right, not seen, not understood. And we have to, if we're thinking really critically about this question of how to be a better elder, it is the first word I think of is humility, right? That as soon as we believe that there is nothing more that we can learn, we only have wisdom to bestow, we have already positioned ourselves in opposition to young people in a way that is counterproductive. The other thing that I'll say is, when we talk about creating space, even for dialogue, for disagreement, for an exchange of information, we have to be willing to ask and also be willing to tell. And by that I mean ask the critical questions and know that we might also be asked some critical questions that we have to be willing to answer, right? It can no longer be a dynamic of like, well, I'm older, I'm elder, and so I don't have anything to say to you, right? Or you don't have any permission to challenge me, right? We want to ask of our young people what they need from us, what kind of relationships they desire with us, and we also have to be willing to tell where we can grow, where we have expectations, and be willing to have this conversation in a very open way so that there is a mutual exchange and that there is room for repair of those things that may be misunderstandings. So I'll stop there. I'm sorry, I had a lot to say.
Oh, I thought that was deeply profound and said much better than I was capable of saying it. So I really am very grateful that you were able to voice that in that way. I mean, let me just put it to you this way, so that no one feels like that we're on this show just trying to impart our opinions on you in the same way we're telling. I will say that even in my own situation with my children, I've had many times been in a position where I've had to humble myself, listen, learn things, and really just be open. And it has transformed in many ways the relationship I have with my children. But that's, from my opinion. And some of y'all can call and ask them about it later because they will be on the show in the last hour. But yeah, I mean, I agree with everything that you're saying. When you no longer have anything to learn, you position yourself to be in opposition with young people. And we all remember that opposition. At least I know that I do. Yeah. And really that actually answers one of the first questions I was going to ask you, because I often like to start conversations with what mistakes am I making? I want to know. I don't want to just congratulate myself or pontificate about the things that I think I know. I want to know, what kind of missteps I'm making. So I think that's a really important thing to bring up. You do a lot of work, obviously. You're a psychologist. You do a lot of work on mental wellness. And mental wellness has become a really hot button topic across generations, especially during this kind of era of the pandemic. How are the young people doing? How are the kids doing? The kids are not okay. All of these things are things we hear on the internet. We repeat them, all of these things. And you also mentioned language. So let's talk about what we need to keep in mind around mental wellness with our young people. What are some of the questions we need to be asking our young people in order to get a sense of where they are mentally and emotionally?
So to that question, I would say we first have to ask ourselves where we are, right? Because they might answer that question in such a way that we're not prepared, right? Yeah. Or we think we are, or we think that we have the capacity to really understand and, to be present for what they have to share. But that means we have to ground ourselves first. Right? Where am I? I mean, honestly, Aja, I can say that in thinking about just the next couple of weeks with school beginning, like I've noticed just over the last few days, like feeling a little bit more despair, right? Like now there's these new additional variants and increases in, cases. I thought about my 16-year-old who's going into his junior year, and the only year that he's known non-pandemic is his freshman year, right? Yeah. And he's over it. I'm over it, right? Yeah. I mean, we're all experiencing a certain level of exhaustion, and so if I'm asking him how he's feeling, I also have to own the fact that I'm exhausted too. So if even in my sort of desire to be reassuring and encouraging and, say like, talk to your mom about how you're feeling, I have to be honest, like, what I said in the beginning, ask and be willing to tell, right? I'm asking him, how are you doing? But I also have to be willing to be a bit more vulnerable, right? And saying, like, look, I'm tired too. Like, I really just wish that we could be at a place where you could have a normal high school, whatever normal is, right? You can have an experience that's not this, right? Yeah. And I think when we're willing to first be honest with ourselves, then we can receive, we can hear where they are and not feel defensive or like we've failed them or we've let them down or we're part of, responsible for the disappointment, right, that they're experiencing. So I would say begin there. Before we ask, we have to really like sit in the mirror and say, okay, what's going on for me?
Yeah. And I think it's so funny because it seems like such a simple thing, but the socialization around parenting is put yourself last. Don't talk about yourself. You're not the priority. And that language is beginning to change. But much like the caller said, some of our listeners here are in their 50s, their 60s, their 70s. And so many of us who come from that generation still really deeply believe in that aspect, in the aspect of not putting the self first. And so as many of them either have are raising grandchildren or their children have children or they just part of the community, all of these different things, it's important to start to shift this thinking. And it really is never too late to do that. I think there's a lot of misconceptions around, what youth want, who they are. And I've been guilty of it myself. In your observation, as you've been mentored to quite a few young people across the spectrum, what are some of the misconceptions that we have about young people?
That's an interesting question. I think, so here's a misconception, and I think it's related to the way that we're socialized. So for those of the generation that feel like, maybe these young people are soft, right? We want to give them space and break space, and they can talk about their feelings. Often what I hear beneath that sort of misconception is envy, right? Like, I wish that I had the space when I was young to be nurtured in that way. And that's what I think elders have to own, right? That part of what we might be struggling with in these misconceptions is what we feel are luxuries or privileges that they have that were just completely unimaginable to us, right? So as, and we talk often about this Black mama parenting thing, right? This is work, right?
Yes.
It requires work and diligence and checking in and evaluation. It requires a lot. And I think our children, our Black children especially, they deserve that we put in this work. And so when we're thinking about those misconceptions, either that, they complain too much, they have more than what we ever have, that they're soft, they need to just kind of like, take it on the chin and keep moving, we have to realize that sometimes we sort of valorize trauma and our trauma responses as like strengths that we should wear as like a badge.
Ooh.
Right? No.
Say it one more time. No. Repeat that. Repeat that. That needs to be repeated. Somebody get a pencil out now. Say it one more time.
Now let me remember, because I'm old.
Right.
That we, we valorize these trauma responses like we should just keep on keeping on, that we should just take it on the chin, keep moving forward. Now, there's a time and a place in which that works. And what we also have to recognize is that there are many trauma responses that we lift up as strengths and that we should carry as a badge, right? Yeah. We don't want that for our children, right? We want them to have places of like tenderness, right? Places where they can say like, this is too much, right? And think about all that they are confronted by, right? All that they see, not just in their local places, but around the world. We didn't have access to this information, right? We may have known what was going on in our neighborhood, maybe in our state, but across the country, right, all at once at our fingertips, this is a whole new era, right, of just having access to information. So they're overwhelmed in a way that perhaps we were not. And so when they're like intellectually aware, right? Our children, our teenagers, our young people, they're very smart.
Yes.
Right? They can sit us down and be like, look, let me break this down for you because I know you may not know. Right?
And they're good for more than figuring out what's wrong with the internet service, okay?
Right.
They know more than how to program your phone, okay?
Right. How to get on the Wi-Fi.
Right.
And what we also have to, and this is why for us to be better elders, we have to be better to ourselves. We have to understand ourselves better because now what they're needing from us is something much more. They're needing for us to be emotionally mature. They're needing for us to have a certain level of emotional intelligence because intellectually, they're there, right? They know.
Yeah.
What they still need guidance and nurturing around is processing all of the emotions and experiences and the feelings, that they have, right? They need guidance in that way. And so if we shy away, right, before, right, in some other time, it may have been like instrumental sort of tangible support, right? Like I helped you get your first job and I'm going to have your back and make sure you have some money and, right, those basic needs, they need more from us than just fulfilling those basic needs.
Yeah. And I think, I mean, you just said an absolute word. If you're just tuning in, you're listening to The Source, and this is Aja Grayton Dantzler, and we're talking about the generation gap. And this is a really great conversation that we're having. We want you to hang in there with us. We also want you to join WURD for the Summer of Freedom Neighborhood Love Tour. This year, we celebrate in West Oak Lane, Mantua, Northwest, and South Philly. Tiffany Bacon will broadcast live from a different neighborhood each Friday from 10 a.m. to 12 noon. Our next stop is South Philly at the Marian Anderson Recreation Center at 740 South 17th Street on Friday, August 6th. Enjoy live performances. It's going to be special guests and stand with WURD. Be a part of the movement to amplify the voice of the Black community. Show your support and join or renew your forward membership on site. That's the Summer of Freedom Neighborhood Love Tour at the Marian Anderson Recreation Center from 10 a.m. to 12 noon. You're listening to The Source. Hang in there and come right back after this break.
Build skills needed for employment through the Philadelphia Skills Forward Initiative, a free upskilling program for workers displaced by the pandemic, those whose jobs are at risk for automation, and Black and brown workers. Complete courses focused on digital literacy, career management, and professional skills for a successful career. Get started today at chamberphl.com. Tune in Sunday at 1 p.m. for more legal issues with Tony. Legal expert Tony Moore will be taking calls and discussing how to strategize and plan wisely, legally. More legal issues with Tony, Sunday at 1 p.m.
Be there this Friday at the Summer of Freedom Neighborhood Love Tour and stand with WURD Radio to amplify voices of the Black community as a digital forward member for as low as $5 per month. And receive a free gift for signing up. See you on Friday and join Tiffany Bacon, 10 a.m. till noon at the Marian Anderson Recreation Center, 740 South 7th Street, or visit wordradio.com. Start or renew your forward membership today.
You're listening to The Source on WURD Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD.
Welcome back to The Source. This is Aja Grayton Dantzler. I'm filling in this week for Andrea Lawful Sanders, and we are talking about the generation gap. If you're just tuning in, we're speaking with Dr. Camila Rashad, and she's been really giving us just a ton of gems about how we can be better elders. And I love the way that she framed this in that, accepting that, yes, we are the elders. We are the elders. We are the folks that are bringing and preserving the culture and then passing it down to the next group of people and hoping that they can be better at it even than we were. So I love the way you frame this. How can we be better elders? Welcome back to the show, Camila Rashad, Dr. Camila Rashad, because we need to give you your proper receipts, ma'am. Okay.
Yes.
We talked about yes, we talked about before we went to break about misconceptions about youth.
Yes.
You do a lot of work with with the Islamic community, with the Muslim community, and you've centered some of your work specifically around Black Muslim community. And here in Philadelphia, which I have heard affectionately called as Little Mecca, we have such a large and diverse community of Muslims here in Philadelphia. And I think it's really a good idea to ask you at this point, in terms of youth that are involved in organizations and that are tied to their religious belief. So not just Muslim youth, but also to Christian youth as well. Yeah. That sometimes I think the room to talk and be transparent about their experiences can be difficult in these spaces. Do you have any thoughts about how, as elders, specifically in religious and spiritual spaces, how we can kind of break through and allow our young people to feel safe to communicate with us in these spaces?
Yeah, I think, that's a great question, because adding both, their racial and ethnic identity and their religious identity, I think one of the misconceptions is that that young people don't want to have anything to do with religion or spirituality, right? And to that, I would say they don't want nothing to do with those shenanigans. They are very much interested in, there's questions around the Creator and who am I and why am I here and what's my purpose? Like, those are spiritual questions, right? And so, and during this time, it is absolutely developmentally appropriate for them to be asking those questions and to be asking us, right? So why do you believe what you believe, right? And if they're observing and they're like, well, what you do don't match up with what you say, so now I'm trying to figure out, like, what exactly you mean, right? So I just wanted to say that this idea that they are completely rejecting, I think people use that as a smokescreen to sort of minimize the fact that what they're rejecting is probably a rigidity, right? A lack of willingness to talk about spiritual journeys. And so they're like, this doesn't feel good to me, right? And so they may push away from, spaces or conversations that they feel like there's no room for them, right? There's no room for who they are. And so as just taking kind of from that premise, that there is curiosity, right, about the world, about the universe, about the Creator. I was, speaking from the perspective of someone who's born and raised Muslim, I think what we have to be aware of, like, history, right? And so I'm of a generation where my parents converted to Islam. And, I was born and raised Muslim. And so now we have a third generation, right? My teens and my 5-year-old that are coming up. And the world has changed with each generation, right? And so my parents were not Muslim teenagers, right? And all that comes with that. Where they were and kind of what drew them to Islam was very much around, the feeling of self-determination and of liberation, of just being able to feel empowered, right, in religion. So they knocked down, right, some of the obstacles and the barriers to that, so that I didn't have to face the same obstacles, right? The ones that I faced growing up were different, right? My family was the only Black Muslim family in elementary school. Right? So it was like, why did your mom dress so funny, right? Why do y'all not celebrate Christmas, right? So we had different sort of struggles, and with each generation, there's going to be sort of a different task, right? And so for our young people now, we want to believe that we've tried to impart, right, as much of what we believe as possible, but do we acknowledge and respect the task that they have now, which may be difficult in a way we can't understand, right? And so, we have teens and young people that are, this is September will be 20 years after 9/11, right? It's been 2 decades, right? And so it has shaped so much of their lives and sort of the propaganda around what it means to be Muslim. And I would say for Black Christian young people, it is the emergence, or just, I think, the recognition of white Christian nationalism, and the way that is very much tied to white supremacy. And so they may also be trying to find a place for who they are that is not just sort of aligned with that nationalistic, white supremacist sentiment. And so they have their process of integration of all of those aspects of their identity. It's different than ours. So we can't say like, oh, we knocked down these doors and so now y'all have it easy and you should.
It's gravy, baby, from now on.
Oh, absolutely not. Absolutely not.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's really profound. Oh my gosh, there was so much in just that answer. But I have to say this, and we had a parent that called in and said they identified as Christian, and honestly, I didn't even think about that. Our young people might actually be contemplating what is the difference between what it is I believe and what white supremacists or supremacists are weaponizing out in the world. Again, you know what I'm saying? By saying that they align with what I believe, like, my goodness, what am I supposed to do with that? So I have to say, I mean, and really in a lot of ways, it harkens back to a different generation of baby boomers who dealt with that during the civil rights movement. So it can be an entrance into a conversation, cross-generational conversation with, let's say, grandparents and grandchildren. Right. So I think that was, extremely profound. I'm curious. We talked a little bit, and this has been said multiple times since the beginning of the show, using the term safe space. Yeah. And we talk about this a lot. I also heard online, and I don't even remember who said it, but I thought this was interesting, that it wasn't our job to say that this is a safe space, but for the people entering the space to deem it a safe space. And so I want you to talk a little bit with our listeners about what is a safe space, what that can look like, and how we communicate with young people who are entering a space that we would like to feel safe.
Ooh, that is such a big question, but one that I love, because I think the idea of a safe space has become associated with also this idea of trigger warnings, right? And I've seen sort of memes and these cartoons like, oh, these young adults, they're so sensitive, and now you have to like preface and couch everything. And, again, what I hear honestly is like envy, right? That there is so much thought maybe being put into how we communicate and how we build relationships with young people. But I think what's important to understand is that safe does not mean that you will always be comfortable, right? So people can be safe and very uncomfortable at the same time, right? It means that this is a space where you can explore with a degree of that there is extended to you the fact that you're learning, that you're striving, that you're imperfect, that you are worthy of care simply because you are, right? No conditions, right? And in that space of being able to explore who you are, that there will be support and honesty, right? And so some of the honesty and the truth-telling might be what causes discomfort, but there has to be some assurance that the truth-telling is coming from a place of genuine love and care. And that's not something that you can just proclaim or just put up on, a wall. Like, this is a safe space, right? The people in it have to be able to sort of validate that when I come here because I know I will be pushed in a loving way, right? That what is reflected back to me is both my strengths and my areas of growth, and that I will be given resources to continue, right, to explore both. I do agree that it's not, that's like for instance, a white person saying, I'm not racist. It's like, no, I want to talk to your black friends. Right. I want to talk to the people you claim to be. Let's take a look at your life and see how you interacted. Right. It's like, now, if they can vouch for you, right, then that says a whole lot. So, I think we get into kind of a dangerous thing when we proclaim ourselves to be allies of communities that are kind of giving us side eye, right? Because your behavior, your has to match, right, what you're saying. But I think the way that we indicate sort of safety for young people is to be consistent, right, and to be honest, right, not to, and especially with our own discomfort. Again, going back to the telling, if we say out of our mouths, like, you can tell me anything, right, and our body is tense, our jaws are locked, and we like, go ahead. Don't tell me nothing I can't. You know, it's like we can position even our bodies.
Your mouth is saying you can tell me anything, but your body language is saying, don't you say something that I ain't gonna like.
Exactly. Right. And they pick up on that right away. Right. They are very observant. You know, they're sensitive to that. So we have to, and if we do experience something that feels like, I know I said you can tell me anything, but not that. Right. You know, like, we have to own it and say, you know what? Yeah, I said that, and I'm struggling in this moment. So can you give me a second? Right? Yeah. Because I want to be true to what I'm extending to you, and I'm just having a moment. Right? Mm-hmm. I think they can respect that, right? Because it's not pretending, right? It's not pulling like the elder card. It's not because I said so card. It's, I'm a human being, like, trying to do the best with this thing, like this relationship we have, as you are.
Yeah.
Right. So I think when we want to talk about safety, it's, one, begin with your own self-awareness, right? Acknowledging your own discomfort, and also being honest about whether or not you truly have genuine love and care and respect for the person you're trying to engage. If there's some part of you that is not there, right, or you have reservations, or you feel really guarded, or you're feeling a little biased or judgmental, you're not going to provide safety for that person, and maybe you're not the person to be sort of facilitating that space for them.
And the young people always saying, let's normalize. We definitely need to normalize allowing our children to be vulnerable with other trusted adults. Yeah. Now, I said trusted adults. Okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was given that as a young person. I remember my mother, me getting to be about 13, 14 years old. And my mother and I had a great relationship. If anyone follows me on social media or knows me, they know that I loved my mother dearly. I still do. Obviously, she's not here in the physical, but that we had a great relationship. But even in that relationship, there were things I did not disclose to her. And so at about 13, 14 years old, she said, listen, it's difficult for me because I want so badly to be your go-to, but I realize I may not be for everything. So here's a list.
Yeah.
Go for it, sis. You know, these might be some places that might be able to provide you something that I can't. Yeah. And although that what she said is a little different from what you're saying, I still see these things as similar, because you're ultimately saying, I may not be able to provide you with a space that is actually safe, even though it's my desire to.
Yes. And when we do that, we are also giving them permission to extend their network of support. Right. Yes. And so if we've done the work of really trying to build a healthy village for them, then we're not going to be offended, right, or kind of get so defensive if they do decide to go to someone else in that trusted village, right? Like, and you'll be able to say, I've built the relationships necessary that my child can find safety in multiple places. Like, check me out. Right.
I'm saying that's my flex. I want that flex in my life. Okay. Exactly. Say what you want, but that's the flex that I am striving for. And I say striving for because, again, and I want to say this as much as I possibly can throughout this conversation, I'm not here to tell y'all nothing. I'm sharing this because these are people who I've talked to. I have an extended village. Woody called at the top of the show, and he really kind of gave me my props and said, hey, congratulations on being a mother of 6. I think that's beautiful. And I agree with him. There is a lot of beauty in that, but there's more beauty to be seen. There's more beauty to be had, and that the village is super important. And that I'm really grateful for the one that I built to this point and having my heart open to the one yet to come.
Yeah.
Anyhow, we have to go to break real quick, and we're going to come right back with Dr. Camilla Rashad. We're talking about the generation gap, and you're listening to The Source. I'm Aja Graydon Dantzler, filling in for Andrea Lawful Saunders, and we'll see you on the other side.
They're back.
Everyone's ready.
Platinum Shows presents the Dell Music Center Summer Series. Sunday, August 1st, it's Jeffrey Osborne. On the wings of love. Peebo Bryson. I'm so into you. And Regina Bell. Then Sunday, August 15th, it's the Basement Party with Big Daddy Kane. Baby Cool Mo D. EPMD, Nice and Smooth. The Sugar Hill Gang with the Furious Five featuring Grandmaster Melly Mel and Scorpio, Roxanne Shante, and Tough Crew. Then Sunday, September 5th, Labor Day weekend, it's the Party in the Park with the Whispers. Stephanie Mills. And After 7. Tickets available at the Dell box office and Ticketmaster.com. For more information, log on to ppshows.com.
Family Therapy Vignette Moments with Dr. Lucille Ijoy.
Ladies and gentlemen, when you complete a job, you feel so much better. You'll sleep better, you'll feel satisfied, you may even cook a fancy meal and share it with a neighbor. When you complete a job, you will rest better and breathe. Breathe, everybody. Let me hear you breathe. Breathe again, breathe again. It's very important to breathe. Say, you have completed a job. Well, after the job is completed, it's time to dance. It's time to tap your feet. And you're going to listen to something called Shake, Rattle, and Roll by Joe Turner. Here it comes.
Shake, rattle, and roll. Shake, rattle, and roll. Shake, rattle, and roll. Shake, rattle, and roll. Well, you won't do right. Save your doggone soul.
Need to replace your Social Security card? In most states, you can request one online with a My Social Security account. A My Social Security account gives you secure access to your personal earnings history and benefit status. You can also get a proof of income letter, estimate and apply for benefits, and more. Save time. Go online. Open a My Social Security account at ssa.gov/myaccount. Social Security. Securing today and tomorrow.
Produced at U.S. taxpayer expense.
Are you looking to hire diverse talent? WURD has got you covered. We just launched a brand new job portal to help connect you with diverse talent in Philadelphia and beyond. If you would like to have your jobs featured on our job portal, give us a call at 215-425-7875 or send us an email at sales@wordradio.com. Check out the job portal today on our livelihood website at wordworks.com. That's WURDworks.com and click jobs.
You're listening to The Source on WURD Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD.
Welcome back to The Source. If you're just tuning in, my name is Aja Graydon Dantzler. I'm filling in for Andrea Lawful Saunders. And today we're talking about the generation gap. We're talking about young people, how we can relate to young people, how we can be better elders to young people. If you want to chime in on this conversation, we welcome you to call in. The number is 215-634-8065. If you're just tuning in, we're talking with Dr. Camilla Rashad. And in the first part of our conversation, she stressed to us the importance of humility, consistency, and honesty as we are engaging our young people in conversation and in guidance and nurturing, and also opening ourselves up to understanding what it looks like and how it feels to create a safe space for them to be who they are and to discuss who they are with us. Welcome back, Dr. Rashad. You have been dropping gems for the past 40 minutes.
I'm surprised you're going to have me back. Some of your callers are going to be like, who is this woman?
No, I think, you know, and I want to address this. Obviously, there are folks that will hear certain words and they might trigger certain feelings and emotions. But what I'm hoping is that I have all the faith in the world in this audience. Like, I believe in this audience of people that what we're not going to do is get caught up in a word or get caught up in how one thing makes us feel, that we open ourselves up to real, true conversation. And that my hope and prayer is that this conversation itself is a safe space. And that my prayer and my hope is to mirror and to model what a safe space looks like for all who are included. We don't want harm to come to anyone, but we want our young people to be in the best place possible.
Right. And, you know, one thing I'll say is that, especially for those listening who may not know me personally, yes, I have sort of my professional expertise, and I'm also a mother of teenagers, right, who are 16 and 18. I've done a lot of mentoring, but where the rubber meets the road is always with my own children, right? And so I can know these things intellectually, and we can sort of debate about them theoretically, but it really is when you're confronted by, you know, a really challenging situation with a young person in your life, right, that you have to practice this. And it doesn't mean that you're going to get it right the first time, but if there is consistency, if there is commitment, if there is a willingness to say, "Oh, I messed that up. Can I try again?" Right? I think then when we extend ourselves in that way, we're also modeling that vulnerability, that self-disclosure that we are asking of them, right? Yeah. It just gives us an opportunity to practice, and these things can transfer to other areas of our lives, right? Like thinking about how our own friendships change as we get older, right? And they require a different kind of nurturing and openness and communication. And so these are things that if we are learning or wanting to be better elders, it'll just help us be better people overall.
Come on. You mentioned the word mentorship. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's talk mentorship. One of the things that I've consistently heard is this bit of a bit of a bumping of heads of young women and more seasoned women, you know, those of us who are, you know, admitted and proud aunties, right? Yeah. Women a little further down the road. And I would love for you to talk about mentorship as it pertains specifically with Black women.
Do we have enough time?
I know this is different. We're nearing the end of our segment, so I'll just put that out there. But I know you can do this. I know you can do it. Come on, Dr. Rashad. I know you can do it.
Listen, because I've given a lot of thought to this, so that's why I said, do we have enough time? I'll try to keep it brief because I also want to hear from your callers. Mm-hmm. Again, I always begin from a place of introspection. Right? If we are very proud of our auntie status, right, once we've kind of gotten to that point, I think what we might have to also take a look at is what are some of the regrets that we might have about different sort of chapters of our lives. How might those regrets or those unresolved issues push us to be harder on young women because we're projecting our own issues, right? Or we're seeing things in them that bring up fear for us, right? And they might be fearless, right? And so when we're cautioning, when we're offering feedback, when we're, you know, kind of giving them what we feel is like really heartfelt advice, we have to acknowledge whether or not or in what way that is coming from a place of our own fear. And I think when there's tension between younger women and elder women, it speaks to so much around like our mother-daughter issues, right? It speaks to how little space there is for Black women to be vulnerable with each other. And when we can't be vulnerable, there's so much that we hide, right, that we don't disclose, that if we did, it would help others make sense of us. And so when we see, and I'm saying this sort of thinking about my own 18-year-old daughter, right, is that when I see all of the possibilities and, you know, the potential and the beauty that she has, I also have to be honest about what that brings up for me, right? Because, yes, we're more seasoned, but we may be seeing more, like, sunsets, right? We're just, looking at the possibility that there's more road behind us than in front of us.
Ooh.
Right? And there's this idea of generativity versus stagnation, right? This is from the Erikson stages of development, that we get to a place where we're wondering, have I made the impact that will, enable me to leave a legacy that I'm proud of, right? That's the generativity. Have I planted seeds? Have I cultivated good things in the world? And if the answer is no, right, that leads us to a place of feeling stagnated, right? And so if we're mentoring out of places of stagnation, then even our well-intentioned sort of efforts will have this sort of coating of like resentment and jealousy and like passive aggressiveness. So I'm gonna stop there.
Oh no! Listen, if anyone who's watching online, they can see my face. I'm like, because I think I've felt this from both ends. So I've had to come to terms with what I was bringing into a conversation in mentorship, as well as receiving some energy that I couldn't quite put my finger on, but I ain't like it. When I was, when I was a young woman. And, recently, obviously, and this was a big thing, and we are not going to get into this conversation, but I do think it's worth bringing up, is, there was a big controversy around bonnets and what women should wear outside. And, and as elder women, should we be tapping people on the shoulder and telling them what they ought to be wearing and doing? And even though I understand the sentiment of togetherness and mentorship and guidance, I do think that there's some nuance missing in that conversation that we have to address. And I'm sure it's not, and just so people don't get me twisted, I'm not saying there's some secret resentment towards women who will wear a bonnet, but maybe there's a feeling of, maybe they're in there somewhere, and I could be wrong. There could be a feeling of, wow, that ability to not buy into a certain respectability that says, in order for me to be respected, I got to look a certain way.
Right.
And I know for Black women, this is a long time tactic that we've used just to be safe. Oh no, we're getting to the end of this segment, and I'm so, we have got...
Well, listen, I'll say it because you have to be the gracious host. But I do think that there is an element of jealousy, and it might sound like, right, how dare she be in the world in a way that feels so free and I could not be. Right? And if that is what is felt and unexpressed or unnamed, it comes out in all of these little judgmental ways. Right? Or it's couched in like, well, I'm just trying to look out for the young sister. No, you might actually have some resentment because so much of your life was constrained, right? And now you see this young woman who, she don't give, right? And she's living in the world in a way that just feels like so much lighter and freer. And you wish that for yourself. And instead of admitting that, you're going to pile on the judgment and the criticism and just say, we just can't be outside the house any old kind of way. Right? And so I would ask, the elder women, like, in what ways are you still constrained, right? And you want to be freer, right, at this season of your life.
Oh, in what way? And let me just say this is not the first time, and amongst Black women academics. So I want y'all to be clear. These are very learned women. If that's part of what helps you to feel that their opinions are valid, which they're valid with or without it. But just to let you know, this is not the first time I've heard this about turning the mirror back on the self, asking the self, in which ways do I feel constrained, so that I can then re-enter the conversation with a young person, or re-enter the conversation with someone who is different from me, who is also Black but different from me, who has a different lived experience than I do. So I think that is really an important aspect of what we're talking about here, and really a huge takeaway for me in this conversation with you. We have to go to break again, and we're coming to the end of our segment, but I just want to sincerely thank you for coming on the show and dropping so many gems for our folk. I'm praying that we all get something from it today. There's no way, I can't even imagine there's a way that we did not. So I thank you again for coming on.
Well, thank you for inviting me. It's always a pleasure.
Yes, indeed. If you're just tuning in, you're listening to The Source. I'm Aja Graydon-Dantzler. I'm filling in for Andrea Lawful Sanders. Hang in there. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back soon.
The hottest place to hang out this summer is the Dell Music Center. The lineup is lit. Thursday, August 5th, Tank, SWV, and Drew Hill. Then on August 12th, Gregory Porter, Stokely, and Leela James. Then on Thursday, August 19th, Fresh Off versus the Isley Brothers. Performing all their greatest hits with Kelly Price and Carol Riddick. Get your tickets at the Dell box office and Ticketmaster.com. This is going to be an incredible season with Tank, SWV, Drew Hill, Gregory Porter, Stokely, Leela James, Carol Riddick, Kelly Price, and the Isley Brothers. For more information, log on to the DellMusicCenter.com.
As a community service, WURD Radio and the Black Doctors COVID-19 Consortium wants to keep you informed about where you can get barrier-free COVID-19 testing and vaccination this week. Tuesday, August 3rd and Thursday, August 5th from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. at Deliverance Evangelistic Church, 2001 West Lehigh Avenue in Philadelphia. For more information, visit blackdoctorsconsortium.com. Stay informed and stay well with WURD Radio. 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD. Be there this Friday at the Summer Freedom Neighborhood Love Tour and stand with WURD Radio to amplify voices of the Black community as a digital forward member for as low as $5 per month and receive a free gift for signing up. See you on Friday and join Tiffany Bacon 10 a.m. till noon at the Marian Anderson Recreation Center, 740 South 7th Street, or visit wordradio.com. Start or renew your forward membership today.
You're listening to The Source on WURD Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD.
Welcome back. You're listening to The Source. This is Aja Graydon-Dantzler. If you're just tuning in, I'm filling in for Andrea Lawful Sanders this week. And today we're talking about the generation gap. We've had a good conversation. We've spoken with Abdul Ali Muhammad and as well as Dr. Camila Rashad. And we have a caller on the line. We have Ron from North Philly. Hi, Ron.
Hello, how are you doing?
I'm good.
Yes, I called in to say that your temperament is just wonderful. That means you get that with your life traveling of history. In the age that you are, you certainly earned that your temperament is deep.
Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry, Ron. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I lost your connection a little bit. You gave me that lovely compliment, but then I lost your comment after that. Can you start again?
Yes. I would just like to comment on what Bush and Pennsylvania giving their opinion on different things. Mine is this. I want you to mind that history shows James Harmon, his choice in life. If he wind up being
oh, no. I'm so sorry, Ron. I'm having a very difficult time hearing you because your phone is breaking up. If there's a the connection is not very good. I would love to hear what you have to say. If you can maybe hang up and call right back when you're either in a quiet place or with a better connection, that would be great. And we have a few minutes before our next guest comes on, so hopefully you can call back. Just if you're just tuning in, again, thank you, Ron, for calling. We're talking about the generation gap. We're talking about young people. We're talking about how we can be better elders, how we can open up a space to talk to our young people, mentor our young people, understand where they're coming from and what their lived experience is like. I said this in the beginning of the show that I have 6 children of my own. They range from the age of 11 to 22. I have an 11-year-old. I have a set of twin girls who are both 13. I also have a 16-year-old who is just 1 week away from being 17. I have a 17-year-old daughter. I have a 19-year-old daughter, and I have a 22-year-old son who is a college student. And I just, my experience throughout this time has been transformative. I cannot lie. My children have taught me a wealth of things about just how to be a better human being. And although being a mother is not required for this type of growth, I will say that motherhood has been the opportunity for me to grow exponentially in how I relate to other human beings, because my children have brought up within our relationship with one another any number of different issues that are out in the world. So as I encounter other human beings who may have those experiences, I can relate back to my conversations and experiences that I've had with my children to then better understand who they are as people. So it's been an amazing opportunity for me. And and hey, we all make our mistakes. We all do the things that we can do, and we do the best that we can, and this is what the space is for. The space is so that we can get a better understanding. Until our next guest comes on, I want us to play another song. Is that okay? I introduced myself at the beginning of the show. I'm Kindred the Family Soul, part of Kindred the Family Soul. And we have a new album out called Auntie and Unc. And we talked about being an auntie in the last section. So I'd love for you guys to listen to this song. This is called I Believe. At least I think that we were going to listen to that song. Well, I guess that's my mistake. Anyhow, if you want to join in on this conversation today, you can call in at 215-634-8065. And I'm actually hoping that Ron calls back because he seemed like he had a really good comment. We talked about some of the elements of being there for our young people. And one of them is humility. Humility, consistency, and honesty. Being able to disclose, open up about yourself, take a good look at yourself, taking care of yourself. It's amazing how talking about relating to young people eventually becomes a conversation about yourself, about discovering exactly who you are. So apparently the song is ready. The song is ready to go. I want to share this with you guys real quick because, hey, listen, the plug is the plug. This is a song from Kindred the Family Soul off our new album, Auntie and Unc. Check it out. It's called I Believe.
I see the weary in your eyes. You've seen way too much and way too little time. I hear the tired in your voice. You've been speaking up so long, but I know you never had a choice. You're a force and I know it's a lot on your plate, a lot on your mind, a lot on your life. Just know that you're not alone. Just know hope is never gone. I see that the night is long, and I promise we gon' make it home. I believe we gonna get there. I believe we're gonna get there. I believe in you. I believe in me. I believe in us, and I believe in we.
When you speed through life, you often miss signs. You have to slow down. Pay attention, focus on what's between the lines. You help me see clearer, and I wanna thank you. When I look in the mirror, don't just see myself, I also see you're my fortress. All that I got.
Welcome back. That was I Believe from Kindred the Family Soul. And if you don't know, I'm Asia Graydon Dancer. I happen to be one half of Kindred the Family Soul. And again, we were talking about young people and the generation gap today on The Source. And I have quite a few young people of my own in my household. And we thank you for listening to this music for so many years, because it has definitely helped to raise these kids that I've been talking about all day. And I'm super excited about my next guest, who happens to be one of my children. We can't talk about young people without talking to young people. I want to welcome to the show my son, Akil Daoud Dantzler.
Hey.
Hello, son.
What's up, man?
How you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. For everybody who is just tuning in, we're talking about the generation gap. And this is my son, who's a 22-year-old senior at Morehouse College. He is an educator, an aspiring educator, and a current educator as well. He's a good kid. We like him. We like him. We want to keep him. But I had you on the show, son, because we are talking about, some of the challenges around young people being heard and young people having an opportunity to let their elders understand them a little bit better. So my first question to you is, are there some things that you want older folks to know about people from your generation that they currently are getting absolutely wrong?
They were our age before. I think that for everyone, hindsight is 20/20. And once you are removed from a certain period in your, once you're removed from a certain stage or phase of your life where you have a certain set of values and beliefs and have a certain routine in order to survive, you don't really think too many times. You don't really put yourself back in those shoes too many times. And then once you have people depending on you, and then once you get old enough to the point where you have a family and a career and things and foundations, your life is about more than just you in that moment. And so, a lot of times I think the disconnect happens with that grace and that understanding that at one point we were all, that this is a cycle that continues to repeat itself. Young people are always going to be, the ones that we have to pay attention to because they're coming up next. Even for me being 22, I know there's certain lessons and things that I've learned in phases in primary school and middle school that for me now I feel removed from, almost to the point where it makes it difficult for me to tolerate, middle schoolers and primary school kids that kind of behave in that way, regardless of the fact that I was once their age. It's just because I've already made it through that space. It's difficult to, check yourself and be like, well, listen, I have to have that same grace that I gave, that I wanted for myself at that age and at that time. And at the end of the day, like, young people are really, for real, just figuring everything out. We don't have the luxury. And it's not that, the adult world and all the time you spend in it is the most happy-go-lucky thing ever. But at the end of the day, young people are building a foundation. They're building the structure, and they're building the life that they want to live and the life that they want to lead. And, they're laying down the stones for the path that they want to follow for the next 10, 20, 30 years. And, we don't have the luxury of experience and wisdom and, years of life in order to help guide us at that point. So in a lot of ways, that makes that disconnect really stronger between, young people and older generations, because there's just that lack of understanding and grace that, is present in those relationships. And I also feel like, nowadays, from my perspective, I see a lot of people in the older generation don't necessarily it doesn't seem like there's as much of what's the word I'm looking for? It doesn't seem like there's as much of a push for, older people to mentor younger people. And more so seems like this general expectation and idea that we have to have it figured out or we have to know better. And how can someone know better when they've never experienced better or can't see on the other side? So like I said, hindsight is 20/20. It's easy to criticize the actions of young people when you've already been removed from that phase of your life. You know what I'm saying? And you don't have to deal with or have the same values, beliefs that made you kept you surviving at 22. You know what I mean?
And it's always, and we've just, and it can be so different. My life at 22 is so different from your life at 22.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, so and you're actually experiencing stuff I have never experienced. I didn't go to college, so there is a bit of a learning curve, and we've experienced this. And I feel like I have responded negatively and positively about that feeling of not quite knowing how to advise you. You know? I'd love you to talk or speak to some of the current challenges that you may be having, like in your that may also mirror quite a few other people from your age group. Give us a little bit of a window into the life of being a 22-year-old Black male in this time and space, and tell us some things and challenges that you may be having.
Well, one, I think it's a lot of being 22 right now is just a mental battle. You know what I mean? I think it's a mental battle and an emotional battle even more now than it ever has been because of social media and how that has now affected our social order. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. You know, young people are watching and comparing their lives to people more than they have ever have. You know what I mean? And so everyone is trying to make it look like, or at least trying to genuinely build something that lets them feel or look accomplished. Mm-hmm. And, you know, for me as a young person, I don't know if I've been able to outgrow that kind of desire to want to impress other people, to prove myself to other people. You know what I'm saying? That was one of my biggest challenges, realizing that I didn't have anything to prove, you know what I mean? And I just had to worry about living my life. You know, another really big challenge was just navigating social media and understanding how to do it in moderation, you know what I mean? Because at the end of the day, it's a sector of our lives it's a part of our lives in which we spread information so fast, and we're getting all these different opinions and viewpoints and windows into people's lives, or at least the lives they want us to see. And it's difficult to not get caught up in that world of things. You know what I mean? That is a challenge, to make sure that you do that in moderation, that you understand how to check yourself and bring yourself back down to earth. You know, also as a young person, it's difficult trying to find that balance of being accessible to the people who you've been accessible to all your life, while also understanding, you know, there are times when you have to prioritize yourself and your own well-being and your own time. You know, that is a big struggle. Also, too, I come from a huge family. So, you know, like that expectation of being there and being present and being an aid, you know what I'm saying, struggling with how to do that in moderation as well. Because, you know, I know that my life has to be my number one priority at this point, you know what I mean? But I also understand that there are people who, you know, whether they have to or not, they depend on me and they rely on me for my energy and my presence, and you know what I mean? And I know that it's my job and maybe not all the time, but definitely in most spaces and most times to step up and be that person for people, you know what I mean? That's an expectation I have of myself. You know, I try to give what I receive. And, you know, my upbringing has been full of nurturing and love and community and village, and all of those are things that I feel passionate about providing back. So, you know, that's definitely a struggle, learning how to do that in moderation and not overwork myself, overburn out. You know, I think another challenge is, you know, staying committed and focused on your passion and your purpose. You know, at the end of the day, being young, you have so much time and opportunity to make mistakes. You have that opportunity now at this point. And so, you know, because, you know, social media is also present, everyone is trying different things. And it's difficult to find that thing for yourself if, you know, if you find yourself in this same cycle of trial and error. You know what I mean? It can almost feel like defeating. It feels defeating. I don't know if that's the proper way to say that, but it makes you feel defeated sometimes. You know what I mean? You feel like you're out of your element, out of your zone, and you feel like you're not doing enough or you're not moving fast enough. Yeah. But at the end of the day, everyone's pace is their own pace, and that was a difficult thing for me to realize as well, that my life is my life and my pace is my pace, and I have to move at that. You know what I mean? And I just have to have faith that everything is going to fall into place.
Absolutely. And I think what you're saying is so important. I want people to understand that at some point during what you said, you were like, listen, I come from a loving family. I come from a family that supports me. But I think it's really key that we listen to the fact that these are very real challenges that you are experiencing, even in a family where you feel loved and supported. Even though you're saying, oh, I have this love, I have this in my life, but that is not going to be the end all be all. That does not mean that suddenly because you come, because oftentimes when kids make mistakes, young people, parents are like, oh, well, where are the parents? Like, well, they might very well come from a family where people love them, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they will not have major challenges, whether they be socially or emotionally.
I mean, also at the end, you have to be willing to accept it as well. You know what I'm saying? And a lot of young people fall into that trend of rejecting it because, you know, they've had experiences that have taught them to cope with it in that way. You know, or they have taught them to be more reserved or more reluctant to receive that type of love or that type of energy or that type of support. If anything, sometimes it may trigger them to feel, you know, like it's a scheme or a scam or someone is trying to play them or, you know what I mean? And at the end of the day, I feel like young people are being attacked so much now. You know, like you think about it, young people are, you know, are becoming the scapegoats for so many things nowadays. You know, we talk about music and we talking about politics and we talking about public health and we talk about, you know, unemployment and all of that bullshit. And college, college and student debt and, you know, intern workspaces and corporate America, all of those spaces, young people have this huge magnifying glass on them. And the pressure is on us to figure it out. And if you don't do it in that allotted time that's considered normal or traditional, you know what I'm saying, then people start to look at you with shame. And sometimes when a lot of people look at you with that shame, you start to look at yourself with that same level of shame. And it can be defeating again, you know what I mean? And for young people being defeated in those spaces, it hurts us so much more than it helps us. It's disastrous.
Hold on a second. I want to tell you. I want to take a call real quick. We got Brother Hemby on the line from West Virginia.
Hello. Thank you so much for taking my call. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yes, I can.
Yes. I just want to thank you. When you called and you said, when you talked to him and you said, "Hello, son," that was very emotional for me. I almost cried. So that was just a beautiful thing. But it's just beautiful to see mother and son. That is just amazing. And I just want to say, everything that he is right now is because of you. Always remember that, you know. And the most important thing for any kids who's growing up is that their family has to be in there. They have to be supportive. They have to be, you know, give criticism. They have to be everything for their kids can be as successful. And I just wanted to call. I took time off away just to call in because that was really beautiful when I was listening. My question is to your son is, do you think there is a disconnect or a division between the younger generation and the older generation? Thank you so much.
First of all, thank you. Thank you. You know, my mother is like my best friend. She already know that. So, you know, our relationship is, us talking right now is like we're talking at the house. But to answer your question, you know, I guess I wouldn't say that it's specifically one of those things. Maybe both. Maybe division and a little bit of disconnect. You know what I mean? I feel like, you know, the older generation has a different set of responsibilities. You know what I mean? Just because, you know, when you start to get older, you have different things you have to be worried about or concerned with. You know, I'm a young, healthy person, and, you know, I don't have anyone depending on me. And so that puts me in a position in life where I look at it through a lens that someone who is in a different type of position wouldn't understand, you know, if they didn't try or if they didn't feel like they could see why I behave or act the way I do in my circumstances. But, you know, I definitely think that has created a disconnect between us because it makes older people less willing to give knowledge to or, you know, reach out to or be supportive of younger generations because they start thinking that we know it all or they start thinking that we have it all figured out or that we don't want to listen or we can't be told anything. When at the end of the day, just as much as the older generation isn't perfect, the younger generation isn't. And and I really do feel like it's the older generation's job. It's almost their duty it's their due diligence to offer that level of guidance and direction to young people because at the end of the day, how else would we get it? You know what I mean? life can't teach us everything. You know, it's important to have elders present, elders around you that can provide you with that type of insight so that you can try not to make the same mistakes that they did. Because at the end of the day, it's all a cycle. We all live in the same lives, just with different circumstances. We all have the same emotions, you know what I'm saying? And at this point, you know, it's not too many super-duper differences aside from, you know, people's personal lives, I guess, like family structure and things like that. And all those things are definitely make an impact on them. But at the end of the day, I just think what it boils down to is young people need guidance and wisdom and encouragement. You know what I'm saying? And constructive criticism as well. And they need to be, and they do need to be redirected in some ways. And there are young people who are very reluctant and who do refuse sometimes that viewpoint, but that just speaks to the trauma and pain that they've experienced that makes that their natural coping mechanism. Yeah. So at the end of the day, like, I think older people have to understand that, you know, they've lived this. You know, they've understood what these feelings feel like. You know, they've worked through this and been able to come out on the other side. You know, if they didn't, they wouldn't be living.
Right.
So I think
that's exactly, you know, what we're trying to get at here, you know, and I thank you, son. Thank you so much. I just want y'all to know my son is at work and took time off his job to come out here and talk to y'all. So I love you, son. I have to take a break. If y'all check out my son's music too, by the way, got to throw a plug out there. I killed WURD on all streaming platforms. Y'all hang in there. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back with The Source.
All right.
Join WURD for the Summer of Freedom Neighborhood Love Tour. This year we celebrate West Oak Lane, Mantua, North, West, and South Philly. I'm Tiffany Bacon, and I'll broadcast live from a different neighborhood each Friday from 10 a.m. until 12 noon. Our next stop is South Philly at the Marian Anderson Rec Center, 740 South 17th Street on Friday, August 6th. Enjoy live performances, meet special guests, and stand with WURD. Be a part of the movement to amplify the voice of the Black community. Show your support and join or renew your WURD membership on site. That's the Summer of Freedom Neighborhood Love Tour at the Marian Anderson Rec Center from 10 a.m. until 12 noon on Friday, August 6th. WURD, showing love this summer.
The WURD Radio Neighborhood Love Tour is sponsored by Comcast and supported by Pico, Keystone First, and Ready Set Philly.
Tune in this Sunday at 2 p.m. for the Gastrology Conversation Show, providing information and understanding about your colon health with Dr. Stephen Blake.
Stage Door, focusing on arts and culture in and around Philadelphia. Hosted by Tiffany Bacon and co-moderated by Jeffrey Page of the Philadelphia Theater Company. Part of The Source, Fridays at noon, exclusively on WURD Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD. Streaming live on WURDradio.com, the WURD Radio app, or watch live on WURD TV via Facebook and YouTube. Sponsored by New Voices sponsor Comcast, NBC Universal, and Pico.
I was in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean when it happened. There was a sudden jolt and our submarine crashed on the seafloor. We were in total darkness.
That's Dr. Dejana Figueroa, a marine biologist and STEM teacher, talking about a deep sea dive she'll never forget.
It's funny, when I was a kid, I was afraid of the ocean, and there I was, 2 miles below the surface. But as a scientist, you prepare for that. Using our training and a little creativity, we fixed the sub and finished our experiments. The dive was just too important. Every dive gives us glimpses at things few people ever get to see. Glowing creatures, fiery undersea volcanoes. When we got back to the surface, I kissed the ground and called my mom, of course. But you know what? I wouldn't trade that dive for anything.
Dr. Figueroa uses her passion for STEM to discover new things and make the world a better place. She can STEM, so can you. Check out She Can STEM for more stories and inspiration. A message from the Ad Council.
You're listening to The Source on WURD Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD.
Welcome back. You're listening to The Source. My name is Aja Graydon Dantzler. I'm filling in for Andrea Lawful Sanders. And today we're talking about the generation gap. We're talking about how we can be better elders. We've got Ron from North Philly on the line. Ron, how you doing? I'm sorry, we lost you earlier. I'm glad you came back.
I just heard discipline and obedience. And because you're the mother, you demanded that. The age I am, it was good for me and it can be good for the generation. You can, today, you cannot make your children your friends. If you give the children to a dog. You'll have a well-loved dude in the same time. If you give the dude bread to the dog, a well-fed dog and a sad child. So what I heard just a while ago, Mother, you deserve all the credit, meaning that you had an obligation and a responsibility to raise this son with rules in your house, and I hear the results of that. I want to make a comment on what was talked about earlier today with George and Mr. Fish making comments. And I like to remind myself that I hear the comments about a person's choice in life. When I look at James Baldwin, he's a perfect example. What to expect? He's one of the perfect examples. He made a choice, and look how productive he was to raise the conscience of the injustice of the government in the system at that time, and to raise the conscience. So it's not so much of a man's choice. And I like to use myself as a Negro man like me. My mother didn't raise me. But good to
I hate to interrupt you, Ron. I'm so sorry. I did hear part of what you said, but again, your connection is just not good today. Hopefully you will have an opportunity to share what you want to say on Facebook possibly, but we're going to have to move on. I'm so sorry. But what I did hear from Ron, which I do want to say, is that he talked about the importance of discipline and talked about the importance of demand and respect from children, and kind of, made the connection to my relationship with my son. And most certainly boundaries are important, and boundaries and discipline are important. And I think that that's something that many of us as parents can immediately agree on. And I don't think it's something necessarily lost on us, but certainly this conversation, and hopefully it's just meant to open up and explore a myriad of different ways that we can relate to our young people and talk to them, and that we can try those things. We can try them. We can see what works. We can see what doesn't work. We can talk with other parents, and we can talk with our young people, giving them an opportunity to talk as well. On the line, I have my next guest, who is my 16-year-old daughter. Her name is Nina, and let's talk with her. Nina, are you there?
I'm here.
Hi, sweetheart. How you doing?
Hi, Mom.
Hi, baby. So today, I don't know if you got a chance to listen, but of course today we're talking about the generation gap. We're talking about, how we can be better elders, and we have plenty of opportunities to talk with one another. I know I have lots of conversations with my friends, with other parents, with my elders who I respect dearly. And, but I also, talk with you as well. And one of the things I want to say this, and for those of you who are really avid listeners of Andrea, I want you to know I had a meeting with Andrea before we did this show, and she said specifically, I want you to talk with young people. We need to talk with young people. And so that really set with me. So I wanted to do this segment and really kind of doing and sticking to something that was also important on her show, which was highlighting the voices of young people. So this is my 16-year-old daughter. Nina, I'm going to just jump out there and ask you, what are some of the things that work for you about the relationship you have with your elders? What are some things that are actually working that you deeply appreciate?
That I deeply appreciate coming from elders or coming from my elders?
Coming from your particular elders. That could be me, that could be other family members, friends, community members, teachers. Can you name just one or two things that really made a positive impact on you that came from your elders?
I will say that elders, especially as a Black young woman, because my elders are obviously Black, they definitely understand that aspect of being a young person, of being a Black young person. And I feel like they offer just a lot of experience on that, especially being older, and because obviously they understand that aspect growing up as a Black teenager. I will say that elders do also, I feel as though they hear us, even though it's a little hard, and a lot of them try. I feel like elders definitely try when it comes to a lot of new things that Gen Z introduces to them.
Yeah, I think one of the things we talked about earlier was, helping young people to feel safe. When you feel safest, or in spaces where you do feel safe, what are some of the things that happen? Are you feeling heard? Are you feel like, you know, you need to be given the opportunity to give your opinion? What are some of the things that make you feel safe and like, you know what, I can really talk here?
I definitely feel like no matter what, I always feel like I can talk around my elders, especially mine. I feel like everything is open, everything's on the table. They're not going to love me any less or anything. So I feel like I'm pretty open with talking about how I feel around my elders, and I feel like they do a good job of listening. But I will say that sometimes it is a little bit difficult because, you know, not everything that Gen Z does is understandable. So it's very hard to defend that aspect, you know.
Because I think, you know, and thank you for just admitting that sometimes y'all do stuff that's confusing. You know what I'm saying? sometimes y'all can be deeply confusing. We
try to be heard and understood as much as possible. So I feel like that's just a new thing for everyone that Gen Z just kind of missed. So I will just say that we are a little confusing when it comes to some things. But I just feel like our elders do take the time, or at least somewhat of the time, to, you know, understand that.
Can you talk to us about some of the challenges that are specifically happening in school? That, because you all spend a good deal of time in school, and we're about to go back to school buildings after being out of the building for quite some time. Can you talk to us about some of the challenges that you have at school that sometimes can be difficult to relay to parents? I'm going to throw this out here. You are a young woman, and through you, I've learned about some of the really difficult experiences that young women have had around inappropriate behavior from people who make them feel uncomfortable, you know, sexually and things like that, that things have happened to young girls that they don't want to talk about. So I would love for you to just speak to some of the challenges that young people have at school that they're dealing with that they may not come home and talk about.
I feel like our elders, especially, just, you know, staff in general, especially, you know, teachers and principals and things like that at school, I feel like their one thing that they just need to start focusing on is really just believing your students and not doubting them, and especially female students, not doubting them and just really hearing us out, because when it comes to those things, it's definitely something that's hard to talk about, definitely something that's hard to express, and somebody's coming to you with that, somebody is reporting that to your attention. Trust and believe that was a difficult thing to do, especially as being a part of Gen Z. I know that Gen Z can also be very harsh to other people a part of that generation, and it's difficult. It really is difficult coming from a young person. If a young person is expressing themselves to you, you should take that serious. I feel like that is one thing that's really difficult coming from a young woman standpoint in Gen Z. So
I think what you're saying ultimately is, if a young person comes to you, and I really want to focus on that, what you just said, if a young person comes to you, that was difficult for them to come to you. If they are expressing something to you, you need to take it seriously, because that means something. It also means something that they chose you to come to. And that maybe if that doesn't go a certain kind of way, that might sour them in a lot of ways in coming to someone else later on down the line. Is that true or not?
That's true.
Yeah,
indeed. I just think that a lot of times we just kind of this generation is very, like we just, you know, touched on, it's different. And it is, as a teenager, as a child at all, it's difficult to come to adults for things. And especially when it comes to being a part of Gen Z, with all these different labels and different things happening, you know, stuff like that. That stuff is very, like, personal, and it's very difficult to come to adults about. So I do feel like that's when you should take it very serious if someone in this generation is coming to you as an elder for help or to reach out to you at all.
I really appreciate you coming on, Love Bug. I really do.
Thank you.
Thank you for talking with us and helping us to get a little bit more insight. I wish I could have you on longer, but my time is running out, and I have one more guest. Of course, you know this person.
Yes.
Yes, you do. And we have her on the line. This is my 13-year-old daughter. This is Lana. Welcome, Lana, to the show.
Hi.
Hello?
Hello, can you hear me? Hello?
Hi, I can hear you. How are you?
I'm good.
You're good. You're good. Excellent. Excellent. The reason why I wanted to bring you on the show, and I brought my children on the show, and I just want to say, if you're just now tuning in, we're talking about how we can be better elders to our young people, how we can, better relate across this generation gap. And I wanted to put myself out there because I have 6 children. My children are across several different age groups. And I just wanted to give them an opportunity to speak, just so that we kind of open up that conversation where we honor the voices of our young people as much as we possibly can. And, the last of this group, even though I have 6 children, I asked 3 of them to come on. Hopefully I'm not in any trouble when I get home. But this is my 13-year-old daughter, Lana. And Lana, what we're talking about today is just how we can be better elders for our young people. Can you talk to us about some of the challenges that you have encountered as a 13-year-old and how you relate to your elders and how you would like to see that relationship get better?
Well, when it comes to, like, relating, something that I kind of, like, wish that my, like, elders would do, well, not necessarily my elders, like the ones in my life, but sort of just as a whole, I feel like there's a really big miscommunication. Like, I feel like a lot of kids have always, like, felt the same, like kids and teenagers. I feel like there's always a basic level of things. It's like you want to be accepted, basically. I feel like that's a universal thing that all kids feel. And I feel like a lot of older people could understand us better if they put those feelings that they once had into perspective of today's circumstances. Like, I don't think it's too, far-fetched from one another. I think we're really close to being able to understand each other and not have this sort of quote-unquote generational war, because at times it feels like there's a lot of people against this generation, but also they have a lot of pride within themselves, which can be kind of ignorant. But also, it's something that has been standing for years, and I feel like people pretend like it's a new thing, which it isn't. And it goes back into that miscommunication where it's like we could understand each other if we just took the time to realize that this has been done before. It's just that it's different circumstances. Like, Dad has always told me, not always told me, but more recently, we were talking about something, and he told me growing up they didn't have, like, bottled water. And that was so crazy to me because we have bottled water all over the house, like, all the time. Or that they didn't, like, drink the bottled water when they had it. And I just thought that was so weird, but it's also it goes into the generational disconnect. It's like, imagine if you were 13 and you were able to drink bottled water whenever you wanted instead of having to get it from the tap. And I think that sometimes it's hard for older people to imagine, but if we sat down and sort of had a longer, more in-depth conversation about it, I think it wouldn't be that hard to understand.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Can you speak to, some of the challenges that you have encountered? So just tell us something that you want, your elders to know about you and some of the challenges that you have in the world. When you go out into the world, tell us something that we don't know.
Well, a lot of the challenges that I have personally, I think for myself, and I can't speak for everyone, but I do feel like in the wake of social media, I feel like there's a lot more, like, insecurity that goes into things more lately. And I feel like being a girl in today's day and age, it's just really hard to navigate without feeling insecure most of the time. So for me, it's like, I think that I would really like for my elders to understand that my insecurity doesn't come from a place of necessarily self-hatred. It just comes from a place of wanting to be accepted. Like I said before, everyone really wants to be accepted. And so when you're on social media and you see the type of women that are getting accepted, you want to be like that. And I've noticed a lot of the discourse about girls my age acting a little bit older than they are. But I think it goes into the fact that when you look on social media and you see the type of women that are being praised and held up to the standard, they look a certain way, and they're usually adults. And you want to be accepted in that way when you're a girl my age. And so it often tends in girls my age, sexualizing themselves. And it's sad, but I understand where they're coming from, because you have this narrative in front of you that you have to look a certain way to be beautiful, and you want to do that as bad as possible, but you don't seem to realize that the reason that you can't be like that, which is the fact that you're a child. So for me, the insecurity thing plays a really big part in the miscommunication between me and my elders. And I really wish that they would, sort of take the time to understand just a little bit more how drastic the change is when it comes to media consumption on what's beautiful and what's not these days. Because you don't, you can't just look at a magazine anymore and see a model that makes you insecure. Because you can avoid that sometimes. As a girl, you could be trying to consume content on an app, and you could be having a good time, and suddenly you have this sudden feeling of insecurity for no reason, because you see the comments under these women
under those particular photos. Well, I thank you so much. I hate to cut you off, my love. I had to fit y'all all into one segment, but I love you so much, and I thank you so much for sharing your thoughts. As always, it was enlightening to me, even though I know so much about you. I appreciate hearing you be so vulnerable and honest. We're going to take a quick break. We have a caller, and we're going to take that as soon as we come back. So y'all hang in there. You're listening to The Source. We'll be back in a moment.
I've done everything to stay healthy and protect my unborn child during COVID. The way I see it, getting vaccinated is one less risk to me and my baby's health for now and the future. Plus, free vaccines are available in my neighborhood. You don't even need an appointment. Just walk in. You have the power to finish this.
Visit pa.gov/COVID for more information. Paid for with Pennsylvania taxpayer dollars.
WURD Radio Digital Tip of the Month with Stephanie Humphrey. Brought to you by Comcast.
You might be enjoying the hot days of summer, but your smartphone probably isn't. Hotter temperatures can potentially damage your phone, so here are some things you can do to keep it cool. Don't leave your phone in direct sunlight or locked in a car if possible. And if you don't absolutely need it, ditch the smartphone case too. That can easily trap heat. Change the settings to lower the brightness, turn off data, put your phone in airplane mode, or try to do less high-powered activities like gaming. If you do notice your smartphone overheating, turn it off and take out the battery if you can. And don't try to cool it down by putting it in a refrigerator or freezer. Just keep your phone in a cool area for a while until it returns to room temperature. Stay cool, stay tuned to WURD for more tips, and stay connected with us at wordradio.com.
Join WURD for the Summer of Freedom Neighborhood Love Tour. This year we celebrate West Oak Lane, Mantua, North, West, and South Philly. I'm Tiffany Bacon, and I'll broadcast live from a different neighborhood each Friday from 10 a.m. until 12 noon. Our next stop is South Philly at the Marian Anderson Rec Center, 740 South 17th Street on Friday, August 6th. Enjoy live performances, meet special guests, and stand with WURD. Be a part of the movement to amplify the voice of the Black community. Show your support and join or renew your WURD membership on site. That's the Summer of Freedom Neighborhood Love Tour at the Marian Anderson Rec Center from 10 a.m. until 12 noon on Friday, August 6th. WURD, showing love this summer.
The WURD Radio Neighborhood Love Tour is sponsored by Comcast and supported by Pico, Keystone First, and Ready Set Philly.
You're listening to The Source on WURD Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD.
Welcome back to The Source. This is Aja Graydon Dantzler. I'm filling in for Andrea Lawful Sanders. And today on The Source, we're talking about the generation gap. We're talking about how we can be better elders. And we actually have Tyrone on the phone from North Philly. Hi, Tyrone.
And peace and blessings to you, my love. How are you, my friend?
I'm lovely.
Well, first of all, let me commend you for I truly, truly appreciate your hosting and your guests. And I definitely want to give you a special shout out for your piece on education. I really, think that we have to include education in everything that we do because it is such, an essential in terms of our everyday lives. And right now, with the things that are happening with our young people, with the violence and all of the other things that are keeping them from reaching their potential, we definitely have to put more focus on education. But I just wanted to chime in a little bit about the topic on intergenerational. And the reason why I feel that intergenerational is such a key aspect in terms of really having I would say, some real solutions to the many problems that we're facing each and every day. And I just want to share very quickly the last summer program that I did. I had 6 young people, 2 14-year-old, 15-year-old, 2 16, and a 17-year-old. And the program that we put together, matter of fact, WURD was at the Penrose Playground. So we put a community and family day there, and those young folks was exceptional in terms of helping to create the activities for that day. And I took them to the various senior facilities to talk with our elders, to get them to share and to get them to engage in one another. And I really believe that's what we need to do right now. Our elders and our young folks must interact and do more engaging with one another. And I believe we would come up with some real solutions that we need to deal with all of the things that are coming at us. So my sister,
absolutely.
Thank you for allowing me to say that.
Mm-hmm.
And once again, everything this week was a great week, a powerful week, and you did a phenomenal job, my sister. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Tyrone, for calling in. I really appreciate that feedback. Thank you so much. And what you're saying is absolutely correct. You spoke about the whole week. At the top of the week, we got a chance to talk with Dr. Janice Johnson Dias, and she runs an organization called Grassroots Community Foundation. And just recently, they did a cooking class in which they had elders learning about healthy cooking, but then they brought in young people to assist in the cooking as well. Because you and I both know that cooking can be a really intimate experience and a great experience to have with another person. And some of us learn some amazing things in the kitchen with our mothers, grandmothers, grandfathers, and fathers as well. And so I think that it's important to, like you said, offer and create spaces for intergenerational contact and conversation, because there's so much to be learned and so much respect to be had. So I'm so glad that Tyrone came on and spoke about that, because it's just deeply important. And I also want to, just give a thank you to my children for coming onto the show. Certainly they all were, at different degrees of possibly nervousness to talk with the public. This is what mom does. This is not what they do. But I appreciate them coming on and being open and vulnerable and speaking from their hearts. I want y'all to know what's a no prep or anything like that. I asked them to come on and be honest and talk about their experience as young people, because this is the type of relationship that I'm trying to mirror in my home. I'm not saying that this is what you should do. I'm just offering the space out here to show you how I feel and, you know, how things are going in my home. And it doesn't mean that we don't have challenges. It doesn't mean that you won't feel uncomfortable. And like Dr. Rashad said earlier, that being in a place of discomfort only really just requires for us to disclose that we are human beings. Say to our young people, listen, I have to take a minute to take in what you said, although I want to hear it and I want to create a space where you can say it, but I'm also a human being. And as we talked with some of our young people, including my son, my 22-year-old son, he also mentioned the space to make mistakes, the opportunity to say, hey, listen, I just am not where you are yet. You have the benefit of looking back and having your hindsight be 20/20. And I really understood that, because as I compare my life as a 22-year-old to the lives of my 22-year-old and his subsequent siblings, oftentimes I have to remind myself, hey, their life is very different. They are experiencing some things I have never experienced. And so they have much to teach me in that space. I think back what Dr. Rashad talked about as well today when she talked about humility. She talked about consistency and honesty. Oftentimes when we think about our children, we don't necessarily think of that as a space, or our young people, because I say young people, not just our children, because all of our young people belong to us. And so, and we have a responsibility to them all. And she said that there's a really important space to be humble, to say, hey, I don't know everything. And that I'm always still seeking to educate myself and to learn new things. And that when you say you have nothing left to learn, you create an environment in which your children may very well pull further away from you. What I've learned is that kids oftentimes live a double life. That children and young people, they know what we respond to. They know that we respond well to certain things, and that you can't say certain things, and that certain things make us uncomfortable. And sometimes they have a tendency to perform that they are well in front of us when they are none of the like. So many of us will see behavior from young people and be so confused. Well, why in the world are they acting like that? Well, why would you say something like that? Or why do you feel something like that? I think that feeling of confusion is a great opportunity to ask, a great opportunity to be curious, a great opportunity to be in relationship and community with young people, to believe that they are telling the truth. My daughter came on and talked about many times when young people will come and confide in you, that is a very important thing. Something very special has happened. When a young person feels like they can tell you something that they've been through, or something that they think, or something that they believe, they've chosen you for a reason, and you want to take it very seriously. You want to believe them. You know that these are really important parts of how we create the next generation that's going to be even more confident, even more loving, and even more about the community that we wish to serve. I also want to talk about our first guest, and I'll say this to everyone. It's so important that we understand that as Black people, we represent so many kinds of experiences, and that if we're going to rise up and we're going to have liberation, it's important that we honor all our lived experiences and that we create love, understanding, and communication about all of it. That we don't allow ourselves to get triggered by certain language to where we don't even hear all the valuable wisdom that people have to give us. So I have been so honored to be with y'all this week. And I thank Andrea Lawful Sanders for allowing me to take up some of her space this week. I thank you all for listening in and giving me the good feedback and fussing at me when you felt like it. It was really an absolute pleasure. You're listening to The Source. I'm Aja Graydon Dancer, one half of the group Kindred the Family Soul. I want y'all to have an amazing day. Thank you for listening.